Dave Pearson smiled contentedly as he looked at his office door. It was late Friday night, and the happy working family was buzzing with excitement in anticipation of the weekend. He was proud of all 33 employees of his company in suburban Philadelphia. Among them that day was his wife Linda. She handled the bookkeeping duties, working mostly from home, but often came in on Fridays to hand out paychecks and keep in touch with the team. The company's main salesman, Dave's brother Rich, was also here as he had finished his sales this week. Dave smiled with pride as he watched his family and employees merge into a powerful team, turning the company into a well-oiled machine. Dave was truly blessed. The only pity was that his euphoria didn't last long. Dave's pleasant musings were interrupted by his office manager, Hannah Kemp, knocking on the door. "Boss, I'm finishing up work and getting ready to head home. I was wondering if I could bring something for tomorrow's pork roast?" "Hi, Hannah. What's all this boss crap? You really run the place." "Damn right I do. So can I get you anything?" "I think Linda's got it under control." Noticing his wife nearby, Dave called out loudly to her. "Honey, do you have a minute?" Pretending to scan the room with a drawn, surprised smile, Linda cheekily replied, "Honey? You mean me? Who else would I mean, smartass?" All three laughed as Linda joined them. Dave took the opportunity to keep things light. "Hannah and I were just discussing who's the real boss around here." "Everyone knows Hannah runs the place," Linda said with a smirk. "And," Hannah added, "everyone knows Linda wears pants at home. Right, Dave?" I refuse to answer that because I'm sure I'd get in trouble." "Smart move, babe. Besides, Hannah, our relationship works best when neither of us is wearing pants." "Whoa, guys. That's not serious," Linda replied. "The way you two walk around holding hands, smooching, and making eye contact is bad enough." Linda blushed, and Dave replied, "I'm proud that we're still on our honeymoon after 17 years of marriage. I've been really lucky in a loving way." Linda wept, and her lips quivered with excitement, and a cute, crooked smile appeared on her face. "Isn't he cute?" "Yes, he is," Hannah agreed. "Before you two decide to get a room, I just wanted to see if I could bring anything tomorrow." "Oh," Linda said, coming out of her love days. "Thanks for the offer, but we've got it covered. Do we know exactly how many people from the company are coming tomorrow?" Hannah looked at the clipboard she was holding. "Looks like 28 employees, 26 immediate family members, and 31 children." Linda did a quick mental calculation. "Okay, that's 85 people plus our family. The caterer makes food for 120 people, so we'll have enough." "Speaking of relatives, Miss Hannah, are you bringing anyone?" Hannah visibly forced herself to smile before answering. "No, I'm on my own." "Come on, girl. You're young and hot. We have a friend from church who would be perfect for you." "Linda, don't do that to me. Okay?" Linda started to answer when Dave interrupted her. "Honey, leave Hannah alone. She's a big girl now." "I know, but—" "Linda." The look on Dave's face spoke more powerfully than his words. "Okay. I'm sorry, Hannah. You know it comes from love, don't you?" "Yes, I know," she replied. Hannah had so much more she wanted to say, but those secret words never made it off her lips. Walking hand in hand across the parking lot, Dave and Linda were anticipating one of their favorite traditions and the busy weekend ahead. Dave asked the obvious question. "Did you make the reservation?" "Yes, of course. Mongolian beef for you, General Tso's chicken for Allie, and I'll try the Happy Family seafood platter." "Great. I could have guessed Allie's order. She always does that." "Look who's talking. I wouldn't be surprised if you turned into a Mongol." "Very funny. Did they bring you an assortment of appetizers, too?" "Of course." They got in the car and drove home. A few minutes had passed when Linda noticed that her usually talkative husband had suddenly become taciturn and with a sort of detached expression on his face. "Is something wrong, baby?" Snapping out of his thoughts, Dave answered uncertainly. Uh, uh, well, not really." "What's going on, Dave? Come on, honey. We share everything, don't we?" "Sure, it's just—" "You're bothering me." "Oh," he said with a chuckle. "It's just, well, a while ago, I was just reflecting on how wonderful everything is in my life, and I started thinking about tonight." "You mean our usual Chinese movie night?" "Yes. Friday night is the highlight of my week, eating my favorite food and then getting cozy with my two favorite girls on the couch and watching some movie. Allie is 15 now. She seems to be growing up so fast that soon our little family will consist of just the two of us." "What do you mean, just the two of us?" "She'll still be our little girl. She'll always be our sweet daughter, that's for sure. But a little girl? In a year or two, our Friday night tradition will be date night for her. Then college, and soon she'll be on her own. It'll just be the two of us. That's the curse of parenthood, baby. Kids grow up. I know, but I don't have to like it. Well, look on the bright side. When it's just the two of us, this could turn into a Chinese movie night. Oh, I hadn't thought of that. Next chapter. Dave and Linda walked through the front door to a joyous Allie who was hugging her father. Their dog, Banjo, barked happily and then ran to investigate the bags of food that had fallen to the floor from Allie's ebullient greeting. I did it. I did it, Daddy. I got an A+ on my geometry exam. I told you it was going to be okay, didn't I? I didn't believe you, but you were right. She kissed her father on the cheek, and her mother looked at her with pride in her eyes. Linda knew Allie was Daddy's little girl, and she was fine with that. She remembered having the same relationship with her late father, and would never deny either of them this blessing in life. Dinner passed in vigorous conversation. When they finished and cleared the table, they retired to the family room for the best part of Dave's week. Dave asked, "Whose turn is it to pick today?" "Mine," Allie replied. "I picked the old comedy you were talking about that I haven't seen." Dave laughed. "An old one? What? From 2015? I thought you were going to pick the next John Wick movie after my choice last week." "Oh God, no," Linda exclaimed. "No body count movies today." Dave didn't want to let the subject drop. "Allie, how many dead bodies were there last week?" "Dad, I lost count after 100. Anyway, this week we're watching Robin Hood, Men in Tights. Sound okay?" They sat on the couch, Dave in the middle, with two women he loved leaning on each shoulder. The word woman lingered in his head. Allie was only 15, but she was already a young woman. He tried his best to enjoy this night, but the thought of a future without her under his roof kept him uneasy. That was what he feared more than anything. Dave's brother, Rich, and his wife, Sonia, arrived early in the morning to help prepare for the big meeting. Their large property with the pool had many things for the guests to do, all of which required cleaning and preparation. Sonia and Allie worked inside, while Linda, Rich, and Dave worked outside. Dave was removing leaves from the pool when he felt a familiar rumbling sound and decided he needed to deal with it. "Hey, honey, I need to go inside to take my morning constitution." "Okay," she called out. "Just don't stink up the guest powder room. Allie just cleaned it, and she'll be pissed." Dave entered the house and started to go up to the master bedroom, but then changed his mind. The unfinished basement had its own restroom, and there was no risk of polluting the public areas with its legendary stench. He entered the tiny room, and the musty basement odor hit his nostrils. He opened the small, high-sash window for ventilation. He had a habit of leaving the room in the dark for his morning routine, because he liked to close his eyes and let his mind wander wherever it wanted. Thus, his morning ritual often took 15 minutes or more. Dave sat down at his desk to take care of business, closed his eyes, and noticed the fresh sense of spring filling the room. He was already beginning to sink into his thoughts when he heard shuffling and whispering voices outside the window. The window was on the side of the house and was hidden by foundation plantings. He strained to hear what was going on. "Rich, Dave can catch us." Dave easily recognized Linda's voice and felt something else stirring in his gut. "No, he won't catch up. He'll be at least 10 minutes away." "What's the bloody emergency?" "Listen, the boys brought home forms from school requesting permission to take a DNA test. Did Allie's school do that?" "Not that I know of." "Oh, shit." "Yeah." "Oh, shit. Did you ever find out if I'm Allie's father?" Dave felt like he'd been hit in the stomach by a cannonball. He fought the urge to vomit and tried his best not to react. "No, I was really hoping to avoid this. I'll check with the school to see if they're doing DNA testing. It's a different neighborhood, so maybe we're safe." "I hope so. Hey, it's been a while since we've met. What do you think? Don't you think we should stop this? It's too risky. We've been getting away with it for years. Besides, I don't want to stop, and I'm sure you don't want Dave to find out, do you? Would you really tell him? It would ruin you too. You want to take that risk? I can always start fresh. You're a real bastard, you know." "Yeah? So what? Pick a day this week." "Damn you. Damn you." "Well, this Tuesday is Dave and Allie's monthly date night. They don't get home until 10 o'clock. How about Valley View at 6 o'clock? "Yeah, okay. We'd better get back. Let me know what the school says." Hearing them leave, Dave got up and closed the window just in time to avoid losing his breakfast in the bathroom. He managed to sit up before he passed out, and silent tears flowed from him. He quietly repeated, "What am I going to do? What am I going to do?" His head was spinning with thoughts in every direction. He had never felt pain like this before, and his chest clenched. He felt like his guts were being ripped out of him. Oh my God, am I having a heart attack? He quickly dismissed that fear, but the pain continued. After a few minutes, he felt a little stronger. He cleaned himself up as best he could, fighting the horrible thoughts that continued to hover in his head. Allie. Jesus, Allie. Is she really mine? The horror of the thought began to cause panic, until he realized that she was his girl, regardless of who planted the seed. But if the evidence revealed that Rich was the donor of the seed, his brother would be in pain until he wished he'd never been born into the world in the first place. Who the hell is Linda? I can't believe. He tried to pull himself together. He needed time to think and figure things out. He knew he couldn't confront them now. There would be 100 people gathered here soon, and he had to find a way to act normal. The problem was that he was a terrible actor and too transparent in his thoughts. After being in the basement for almost 20 minutes, he realized he had to come out of hiding. What can I do? His mind wouldn't settle down. Ice, he whispered aloud, addressing no one in particular. He realized that by sneaking out of the house to buy ice, he would lose precious time to pull himself together. He splashed water on his face, trying to hide the signs of his devastation, and then went upstairs to try his heart out to portray an Emmy-worthy performance. As he exited the basement, he spotted Sonia. Sonia, if you see Linda, tell her I'm running for ice. Sure, she replied cheerfully, unaware that her world was about to explode as well. Dave parked in front of the store and decided to take a few minutes to just walk around and think. Walking always helped him think. He felt tears come to his eyes and shouted angrily, "Stop it!" He had never been a tearful or emotional person, and it made him angry that he couldn't control himself. He needed to be in charge and think straight. He needed a plan of action, and he also needed to find a way to get through the party and the days that followed without his family suspecting something amiss. The walk calmed his emotions, and his thoughts became productive as the basis of a strategy took shape. Realizing that he had been away from home too long, he went to the store, bought 8 large bags of ice, and headed home to begin the first act of the tragedy in which he had unwittingly found himself. To his relief, the first person to see him was Allie. She looked at him, and Dave realized that his acting skills were already failing him. "Dad, what's wrong? You look terrible." "My stomach. I had to pull over to the side of the road to throw out a cookie. Can you move the ice from my car to the big freezer downstairs? I need to lie down." "Sure. I'll tell Mom you're not feeling well." "Thanks, honey." Dave hoped that by isolating himself for a few hours, he could pull himself together. There was no better cover than an upset stomach. He heard someone coming up the stairs and quickly jumped up on the bed. A worried Linda opened the door and found him curled up in a ball on the bed. "Baby, Allie said you were sick. What's wrong?" "I don't know. I don't seem to have a fever, but my stomach cramps and I've thrown up twice already." "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry about that. Look, we've got everything under control for the party, so just lie in bed for a while. If you feel better, come back. But even if you miss the party, I'm sure our guests will understand. I don't want to miss it, but thanks for understanding." She kissed his forehead and discreetly checked to see if he was showing any signs of fever. Then, to his relief, she quietly left the room. Left alone, he got up to walk around. Dave's logical mind began to come up with a strategy. Then he started jotting down details and possible contingencies. Divorce was a given. No doubt Rich and Linda would be laid off. He thought through the financial details. He tried to figure out how to protect innocent bystanders. Worry for Sonia and her boys and Dave's parents plagued his conscience greatly. But Allie? Whether she belonged to him or not, all this would shatter her world. He thought she would want to stay with him, but he couldn't be sure. He'd already lost his wife and best friend, and he couldn't bear the thought of ruining his relationship with his young daughter. These fears threatened to bring on more tears, but he silently chided himself for not being able to hold them back. As if sensing that he was thinking of her, Allie chose that moment to visit him. He heard her coming up the stairs and quickly lay down. He pretended to sleep, but his play failed him again. Her hand ran gently through his hair above his ear. He couldn't look at her, or his game would disintegrate. "Daddy, are you okay?" "I don't know, baby. I want to try to get a few hours of sleep before people come." Banjo jumped on the bed and licked his master's face affectionately. Dave let him do it, not only because he liked the dog's attention, but because it effectively wiped away runaway tears. "I brought you a concerned friend. Do you mind?" "Sure. Hi, buddy," he greeted his furry companion, hugging him. "I love you, Daddy. I hope you're feeling better, okay?" "Thanks, baby. I love you too." Since he was facing her to hide his face, She had to lean in behind him to kiss his forehead. Feeling her love, he was covered in pleasant goosebumps, as if physically confirming how much he loved his little girl. At that moment, he realized he had made the right decision regarding the dilemma he was struggling with. Allie had to know the whole story before the confrontation began. He couldn't protect her from the truth, so the right decision would be to prepare her. He knew when and how to do it, but he hated that it was necessary. What were Linda and Rich thinking? He thought to himself. To understand their cruel betrayal seemed unfathomable to him. Now he was to set off a bomb in his family by exposing their treachery. The blessings he had enjoyed less than 24 hours ago had now turned into painful memories of a perfect life that no longer existed. With the sour taste of betrayal in his mouth, he quietly spat out his anger. Damn them! Damn their sorry asses! Dave managed to be sociable with the guests, and he was lucky that Linda and Rich were too busy to socialize with him. Hannah cast curious glances at him now and then, as if realizing something was wrong, but said nothing. He kept Allie close to him so that he could care for her, and indeed lean on her for strength. She knew of his dependence on her, but assumed it had to do with the fact that he wasn't feeling well. Her watchful eye reassured him not to give himself away. He helped with the cleaning and then announced that he was going to bed early. His decision to use the guest room was justified, and Linda bought that excuse. He was pleased with himself that his plans for the first night had worked out well. The next morning, the family attended church. In the middle of the morning message, Dave pretended to feel his phone vibrate and looked at the text screen, feigning disgust. Linda threw him a questioning look, to which he replied, "Later." Once the service was over, she asked, "What was that message?" "The owner of Gupta Water Equipment needs me tomorrow for a meeting with his big client. He wants me to be there until lunchtime, so I'll be back on Tuesday." "Where are they located?" "In Pittsburgh. I'll need to leave this afternoon." "Are you feeling all right? You looked very green yesterday." "I'm all right. I'd better leave this afternoon. I want to have enough time to get a good night's sleep." "So we're still going to your parents' house for lunch?" "Yes. I'll drive separately so you and Allie can stay." Dave was pleased with himself. The second and third nights were safely completed. At his parents' house during Sunday brunch, he stayed as far away from Rich as possible. Linda was busy enough helping with the food and chatting with Sonia, so she didn't notice his aloof attitude. He left as soon as lunch was over, stopping by the house to pick up any necessary paperwork, and then driving to the Marriott Courtyard Hotel, 5 miles from their business. And after checking in and getting settled, he called his attorney, who fortunately also happened to be a good friend who didn't mind the Sunday call. "Hey, Dave. To what do I owe this Sunday's call from my favorite client?" "Bill, I apologize for taking advantage of our friendship by calling you today, but I have a serious problem." "Damn, I'm sorry, my friend. Do you want to come over to my place and talk? I've got a few bottles of Yuengling lager beer with your name on it." "Do you mind?" "Sure. I won't even bill you for the watch or the beer," he said with a chuckle. "Come over if you want." "Dude, thanks. You're a good friend, and I really need one right now." Dave met with his attorney, Bill Hardwick, and explained his dilemma. Bill had gone through a divorce himself for similar reasons, so he really turned out to be an involved listener. As they got into the details of Dave's plan, Bill realized why his services would be needed, even though he didn't practice family law. "It's a smart move to combine business law and family law in this problem," Bill remarked. "Would you mind using the services of my friend who handled my divorce? She's a real shark." "I was hoping you had a recommendation. How soon can we call her?" "Let me call her right now and see what she can do to fit us into her schedule." Bill stepped back for privacy and called Angela Hall. She hated cheaters with a passion, and Bill knew she would treat Dave right. After talking for a few minutes, he disconnected the call and returned to his friend. "Good news. She's coming over and joining us for dinner. Is that okay with you?" "Wow. It makes me feel special to get a Sunday service like this." "Listen, my friend. What your wife and brother did really hurts my soul. We have to make things right. I have to say that you and Linda are the last people I expected to meet in a situation like this." "Yes, both you and me." "Well, don't start feeling too special. You're buying dinner. We'll order from Kelly's Steakhouse when Angela arrives. They deliver, and they know my place well since I can't cook." Angela was a nice woman, and Dave realized that she and Bill were more than friends. Bill quickly confirmed his suspicions. "Yes, my friend. This nice lady is single. But don't think you have a chance. She's already ready, as we're getting married in a month." "Wow, that's great. I can come up with a lot of sarcastic comments, but my mood has my filters down and I don't want to come across as nasty." "Relax, Dave. I already know I don't deserve this beautiful, amazing woman." They spent the afternoon and evening discussing strategy and thinking through their actions. Angela took Dave's financials and set up a meeting for Monday afternoon to finalize the details. All indications were that Dave would be ready to serve Linda on Friday. At one point, they took a break so Dave could pretend he was in Pittsburgh when he called home. Linda answered, "Hi, honey. I guess you got there okay. How are you feeling?" "A little tired, but that's okay. I had a quick bite of a burger and I'm going to go to bed." "Is Allie there?" "Yes, next to me watching TV. Can you put me on speakerphone?" "Sure." A moment passed as she handed her daughter the phone. "Hi, Daddy. I miss you already." "I miss you too, honey. I just wanted to let you know I'll be home in time for our date on Tuesday." "Oh, good. 'Cause I was wondering if you were going to set me up." "Never, baby. We'll have a fancy dinner and a movie. Pick a movie you want to see that starts around 7:30, okay?" "Sure." "Okay, guys. I'm off to bed. Love you both." After a chorus of love yous, the call cut off. Linda was a little hurt that they hadn't talked more, but she suspected that Dave's 5 or 6 hour drive had knocked all the energy out of him. Dave opened the window by the hotel bed, hoping the fresh air would soothe his soul. But instead, strong odors from the dumpster downstairs wafted into the room. Just right, he thought, reflecting on what a stinking mess his life had become. He slammed the window shut, plopped down on the bed, and spent the night haunted by the nightmare he was living in. The next day, Dave's meeting with Bill and Angela went well, and the evening call home was short and sweet when he announced that his clients were expecting him for dinner. In fact, Dave was sitting in a local hotel room eating a hamburger prepared for the room, planning strategy for the next day when he would have to bring Allie up to speed. It was the day he would have to watch his little girl grow up fast, learning the darker sides of life. It was a day he dreaded with all his heart and soul. Tuesday morning, Dave finalized a few more parts of his strategy, then met with his attorney once more to finalize the company-related issues he planned to address in the upcoming divorce, as well as the severance package he planned to pay to Linda and his former brother. He arrived at the office just after lunch to give the impression that he had just arrived from Pittsburgh. The sight of Hannah brought to the surface all the emotions he thought he had kept under control. Instead of leading her directly to his office, he greeted her with an awkward smile and closed the office door behind him. "Get a grip," he said softly to himself. The list of actions in front of him was the crutch that helped him keep his composure. Taking out a notepad, he reviewed the itinerary, took a deep breath, and called his friend and trusted office manager. "Hi, Dave," she said with her usual smile, which quickly faded when she saw his face. Silent tears ran down his cheeks. Not only could he not hold them back, but he didn't want to. "Oh my God, what happened? Are you okay?" She threw aside all rules of office etiquette and rushed to hug the man she held dear, who was clearly in pain. "Dave, what's wrong? Are you sick or something else? Please talk to me." "No," he replied in a shaky voice. "I'm not sick. No one's sick." Hannah pulled a chair over to him and took his hand, stroking his arm, and sat down beside him. Shit. He grabbed a napkin as his composure began to return. "We need to change some things. I think they'll be good, but the reason they're needed is really screwed up." "What? What's wrong?" He looked at her with the saddest eyes she'd ever seen. Swollen and red, they betrayed the degree of pain her boss was in. She realized that only one thing could shake him so badly. "Linda? Something with Linda?" He nodded, finding it difficult to answer. He lowered his head and averted his eyes, then squeezed out a single word. "Roman." "Oh, my lord! Linda?" She hugged him again, seeing that he was losing his composure. "I can't believe it. Are you sure? Do you know who?" Dave nodded his head, clearly having trouble naming the culprit. Hannah knew she had to be patient. He looked up at her, and his expression changed from all-consuming sadness to burning anger. "Rich. My own damn brother." Completely shocked, Hannah stood up abruptly and began to pace. "That son of a bitch!" she hissed, trying not to be heard. "That stupid, selfish bastard!" She continued to pace and rant as her mind digested her boss's misery. After a few minutes, she calmed down and hugged the broken man again. Suddenly, she raised her head sharply and looked him in the eye. "You found out right before the party, didn't you?" "How did you find out?" "I realized something was really wrong, and I didn't believe the sensitive stomach story. I overheard them talking and I immediately threw up, so the sensitive stomach story was partially true." "And I guess you really weren't in Pittsburgh yesterday, were you?" "No. Lawyers." "There's no chance of you staying with her?" "I've been praying to find a way, But they've been dating for 16 years or more. I can't get over it. I'll never see her as the woman I loved. Hannah went to the refrigerator in Dave's office and pulled out a Coke, then took 2 glasses and a bottle of rum from the cabinet. I think we both need a rum and Coke. What do you think? I think that's a great idea. Hannah handed him the glass and sank into the chair across from him, taking a big sip. They sat in silence for a short while, looking at each other, and then turned to business matters. Dave started the conversation. Apparently, they're both going to be fired after Friday. Obviously. Rich's wife, Sonia, has a business degree. I want to see if she can handle Linda's job. We won't get into the matter until next week, so I may need you to find a way to cover Linda's duties in the short term. I can. I know her job and will be able to do it. Hopefully not for too long. I don't want to overburden you. No problem. I've got big shoulders. What about sales? Well, a while back Debbie Gleason said she wanted to get into sales. She's very well established as an employee of Rich's, and I think she'd be good at it. I agree. The hardest part is taking Debbie's place. Tammy Fields. She developed systems and helped with purchasing. She's also had a lot of business courses. I think she'll be able to fit in easily. Good. Sounds like a good fit. What's the time frame? This Friday, just before they get ready to leave, tell them you and I talked about expanding sales and see if they're interested. Let them know they're not telling anyone yet, but you and I want to meet with them Monday morning to offer them promotions. I got it. Anything else? Yes. Sometime before Monday, could you draw up job descriptions for them? I'll talk about compensation packages when we talk to them on Monday. Yes. What else? A few remaining tears streamed down Dave's face. This is probably the most difficult task. You're one of my closest friends. I'm losing Linda, my best friend, so I apologize in advance if I have to lean on you even more. Hannah ran around the table and hugged Dave as he stood up. This will be my easiest task and my greatest privilege. Hannah walked out of the office aching for Dave. He was too good a man to be in such pain, and she couldn't help but feel it. Next chapter. Linda paced aimlessly, pretending to be busy in the kitchen, which was already spotless. She hadn't been with Rich in almost a year, and trying to figure out why she was still giving in to him tormented her. She didn't like him, much less love him. After their brief conversation in the garden on Saturday, Linda decided that she would put an end to this nonsense one last time. She didn't believe Rich would really tell Dave, after all. He had so much to lose. After all, she had risked too much for something she was sure she would never enjoy. In hindsight, she should have admitted that years ago. The question of why she had jeopardized her family for something so vulgar and meaningless constantly grated on her conscience. Dave interrupted her musings by walking through a side door. She threw herself into his arms and kissed him. Now that's welcome home, he said with some surprise. What prompted you to do that? I love you so much, and I just missed you, since we haven't been together since the picnic. I missed you too, baby, he lied. Ready for your big date with Allie? You betcha. He wondered what would happen if he asked if she was ready for a date with Rich. She's already getting ready and will be down in a minute. What do you have planned for tonight? I'm taking her to Vincent's Italian restaurant, and then a movie of her choice. Do you have plans for tonight? He noticed her flinch slightly. Oh, nothing much. I've decided to go shopping at the mall. We don't need any window shopping, he teased. That's very funny. I'll just see if there's any worthwhile stuff there. Well, remember to shop safely. He regretted what he'd said as soon as it came out of his mouth. What does that mean? What? Nothing. Just trying to make a joke. He noticed her eyelid twitch strangely. Thankfully, Allie came down the stairs and interrupted the growing awkwardness. Daddy! Allie rushed into his arms with her usual joyous greeting. She was dressed in her Sunday clothes and looked much more grown up than he was willing to admit. She was growing up too fast, and today's conversation was going to make her look even more grown up. Baby, ready to color the town? Color the town? What does that mean? Just having a good time. Oh, then yes, and also with my favorite guy. As they left, Linda was overwhelmed with a lot of emotions. She was overwhelmed with pride and love for Dave and Allie, but guilt and remorse began to take center stage in her thoughts. After tonight, Rich and I are definitely finished, she thought. She waited 20 minutes and then grabbed her keys to drive to a rendezvous with her longtime lover. As they drove away from the house, Dave felt his chest tighten. Taking a few deep breaths, he nervously took Allie's hand. Honey, I have to apologize in advance for tonight. Apologize? For what? We won't be able to have a fancy dinner or go to a movie tonight. I have serious things to talk about and something to show you. Serious? Allie's concerned look brought tears to her eyes. Daddy, you're not sick or anything, are you? No, no, baby. We're going to stop at Chick-fil-A now, and then we'll go somewhere and talk. Okay? Why can't you tell me now? Is it some secret from Mom? You're freaking me out. Please? There's nothing to be scared of, baby. It'll just be easier if I'm not driving. Be patient, please. They were silent for a few minutes until they entered the Chick-fil-A cafe. After ordering chicken strip specials, they pulled onto the main road. Kid, let's eat while we go where we're going. For 15 minutes, they drove in complete silence until Dave pulled into a small office complex across from the Valley View Motel. Okay, Dad, we're parked. What's going on? Why did we come here? Dave looked at the innocent face sitting next to him and began to shake the foundations of her world. Honey, well, shit. I'm sorry. It's hard. She took his hand and smiled forcedly. It's okay, Daddy. Tell me. Dave let out a large sign. Your mom's having an affair. It's been going on for a long time. Allie pulled her hand out of his arm in shock, and her face contorted in pain. No, it can't be. Mom would never. That's what I thought too. It's like I never knew her. That's why we're here. She's supposed to meet him here in about 10 minutes. Meet? With who? We'll find out soon enough, baby. She cried and hugged her father's neck as hard as she could. It can't be. You must be wrong. Her denials, mixed with tears and emotion, broke his heart. Dave noticed 2 cars pulling into the motel parking lot. Allie felt his attention drawn to the scene across the street. She pulled up and saw her mom's car parked. Then she saw her Uncle Rich get out of the car and enter the motel office. With complete shock on her face, she quickly looked at her father and saw tears streaming down his face. The girl saw her father's heart breaking, and her heart broke for him. She hugged him as best she could, settling into the bucket seats, and cried at the horror they had endured together. She felt him trying to move and noticed that he was trying to take pictures of the tragic scene. They watched as the lovers embraced and walked into room 103 together. Dave reached for his daughter's chin to encourage her to look at him. I'm so sorry, baby. He gently wiped the tears from her face. I'm so sorry. They just hugged each other to give each other strength as they each pondered what they had seen. After a few minutes, Allie stood up and looked at her father. This is killing our family, isn't it? Yes, baby. The 3 of us, Uncle Rich and Aunt Sonia, all of us. I'll stay with you no matter what. I don't want anything to do with her. Then I'll do everything in my power to keep you with me, honey. You don't understand, Daddy. If she tries to make me stay with her, I'll make her life so miserable she'll have to let me go. Count on it. He wanted to tell her to stay open to a relationship with Linda, but everyone's emotions were too strong. They could talk about it months later, but right now, it was too soon. Allie, the hardest part is going to happen in the next few days. I'm going to talk to your mother on Friday night. You have to act normal until then. Can you do that? She started crying again. I don't know. How can I do that? Well, we can talk about this and the plans I've made. Let's get out of here and go somewhere else where we can talk. Dave drove to a deserted picnic spot in a city park that was well lit as the sun went down. They talked, planned, cried, screamed in frustration, and bonded on a deeper level than ever before. It was 2 against the world. They drove home just after 10 p.m. Allie wasn't sure she could act like this for 3 days. Daddy, I'm not sure I can see her without giving her a good slap. Watch your mouth, honey. You may not want to hear this, but eventually you're going to have to maintain a normal relationship with her. They'll never be the same. I'll definitely never respect her. Let's stick to the plan, and it'll take the pressure off of you to act normal. When we get home, just pretend to be really tired and go straight to bed, okay? I can do that. Allie paused to gather her thoughts. Daddy, I really love you. I don't know how you can stand what she's doing, but I'm here for you, okay? How is a slacker like me lucky to have such a wonderful daughter like you? She took her father's hand as he pulled into their driveway. You're far from a slacker, Daddy. You're the best man I know, and the best father a girl could ever dream of having. They entered the house quietly. Fortunately, Linda was already in bed, and that allowed Allie to take control of herself. Dave found Linda pretending to be asleep. He figured she wouldn't want to frolic, since she had just been with his brother. She didn't know that he was counting on her avoiding him so he could avoid her. Dave felt sad that this might be the last time they both got what they wanted in bed. All night they lay back to back, each pretending to be asleep, each with their own thoughts, each in silent tears. Dave woke up from his nap and immediately smelled coffee. He got up, did his morning chores, got dressed, and packed his suitcase to head across town for 2 nights. Going downstairs, he quietly went into Allie's room to see if she was ready, and she greeted him with a silent smile and a nod of her head. He found Linda in the kitchen making pancakes for the family. She turned to greet him with a wide smile. "Good morning, honey. Breakfast is almost ready." He hugged her from behind and kissed her neck like any other morning. As planned, Allie came out of her room exactly at the appointed time. "Good morning, parents." "Good morning, baby. Did you sleep well after your date with that hot guy?" "Sure did." "Dad, have you asked her yet?" Linda threw her husband a questioning look. "About what?" "I forgot to tell you last night that I have to go back to Pittsburgh today, and I'll be back on Friday. I mentioned it to Allie last night, and she begged me to go with her." "Of course," Linda echoed cheerfully. "Allie will make your trip much more enjoyable." "Great!" Allie exclaimed. "I'll eat quickly and get ready. It won't take me long." Breakfast was eaten quickly, so conversation was minimal. Allie rushed off to pack, while Dave went to his home office to gather the necessary items. Allie and Dave got into the car, and both breathed a sigh of relief. "How did I do, Dad?" "Great. Your idea to come with me was just brilliant. Now neither of us will have to worry about the quality of our acting." "You mean bad quality, don't you?" "Exactly. Dad, have you thought about having me with you when you confront Mom?" "I'm still not sure, baby." "I want to be there, and when you see Uncle Asshole too." Language. "I'm sorry. I just think this whole mess deserves a lot of swearing." Dave smiled, admiring Allie's strength of character. A question crossed his mind. "If you were there, what would you say?" "I'm not sure. I think I would have followed my first instincts. But she would have no doubt about how I feel and how much I'm on your side. I want her to know she can't hide from me what she's really like." They checked into a hotel on the other side of town and were on their way in the elevator to their room. Allie was unusually quiet for a while. She stared at the floor in the elevator and quietly asked her father a question. "When do you think their affair began?" "I don't know exactly, but it was a long time ago." She looked at her father with tears in her eyes. "You don't think—" He interrupted her. "I know what you're asking, baby. I don't know, but the answer won't change anything between us." They stepped off the elevator and walked in silence to their room. As soon as the door closed, Allie continued to talk about what was on her mind. "Do you want to find out everything?" "I don't know, honey. Do you?" "I know who my one and only daddy is, but I think it would be wise to find out. It's just, well, it's bad enough being the daughter of one cheating boyfriend. I don't know if I could stand being the child of two selfish assholes." "So you want to know?" "I guess I do. Is that okay?" "Yes. I feel like that question is like an axe hanging over my head. Is it okay if we wait a few months? I have a reason to hang on for now." She hugged him with tears in her eyes, after which they started unpacking. During their stay at a nearby hotel, Allie and Dave continued to communicate. When Dave needed to meet with lawyers or take care of other business, she spent time by the pool swimming or reading while sitting in the sun. On the first day of their stay, Hannah came to the hotel to follow their strategy and then joined them for dinner. Allie and Hannah really enjoyed each other's company. After dinner, back in the room, Allie decided to share freely. "Dad, you know Hannah has a thing for you, right?" "What? You think so, don't you?" "Yes. She likes you a lot. You've never had anything with her, you know?" Dave stepped back, and his face looked as if she'd slapped him. "I hope you know me better than that. I've never even come close to your mom." With tears in her eyes, she rushed forward and hugged him. "Oh, Daddy, I'm so sorry. I don't, I mean, I know it's not like you. I shouldn't have asked about it. I'm so sorry." Dave's heart melted. "Honey, your mom has rocked your world and mine pretty badly. I think it's perfectly reasonable to question whether someone is who they seem to be after you discover that one of your parents isn't who you thought they were. Rest assured, I am who you know I am. I loved your mother with all my heart and would never cheat on her or anyone else." Still panting, Allie asked him the question that worried them both. "Then why did she do it?" "I don't know, baby. I just don't know. Hopefully we'll find out on Friday." "I'm sorry I said that, Daddy. I know how good you are. Will you forgive me?" "You don't need forgiveness for asking what's on your mind. You just caught me off guard." The warm glow from his daughter's presence quickly returned to Dave's heart. She looked out for him and was his only reliable pillar of sanity. He had almost forgotten that she had had to overcome a lot too. The next day, Hannah called Linda at her home office. "Hi, Hannah." "Linda, how are you doing?" "Couldn't be better. How's it going?" How's the month-end closing coming along? Almost done. Why do you ask? Well, are you planning on coming into the office tomorrow? Our IT guy will need your laptop over the weekend to update the software and make sure it doesn't have the virus that was on our network. I'm going to be there all day. I've got some paperwork to get done in time. Great. I'll see you tomorrow, and don't forget to bring your laptop. Maybe we'll have lunch since your usual lunch partner is out of town. Sounds good? See you then. Hannah breathed a sigh of relief. She knew her soon-to-be ex-girlfriend's life would be upended. She felt sad for her and her family. But in the back of her mind, in a place she'd spent years trying to control, a bright ray of hope glimmered. On Friday, the day that would mark the destruction of her family, Allie woke up and cleared her eyes. She looked at her father, who was staring out the window with a cup of coffee in his hand, not paying attention to anything. Tears glistened in his eyes. Dad, are you okay? He looked at her with a forced smile, walked over to her bed and sat on the edge. He gently stroked her hair, moving it away from her eyes, and kissed her forehead. Am I okay? Not really, no. How about you? Are you ready for a really bad day? Yeah, she said with a sigh. There's no choice, is there? What do you mean, baby? You can't forgive her and stay, can you? I wish God would give me that option. Ever since all this came upon me, I've been asking myself the same question every minute. But all these years, all this hiding, all her pretending to be loving and faithful, I just can't see her as the woman I loved and married. Even if it was just a random, isolated event, I think I could find a way to overcome it. It's much deeper than that. They hugged and tried to draw strength from each other. Allie whispered in his ear, Thank you for including me. I'm glad I know what's going on. I don't think I'll be able to wake up tomorrow with a surprise. He pulled away from the embrace and looked into her tear-stained eyes. Baby, some people will think it was wrong of me to lean on you this week and involve you in everything. I really needed you, and your maturity for a 15-year-old girl is amazing. Are you okay? When Daddy's here, I'm fine. Then I'm fine too. What do you say we start this shitstorm? Language, Daddy. Sorry, baby. After a light breakfast, they both showered, packed their bags, and checked out. They drove to his lawyer's office and were happy to see both Bill and Angela there. His legal team had spent a lot of time talking to Allie and were clearly impressed with the young lady's composure and poise. The four of them went over the divorce proceedings and other documents. Allie was interested in participating in the discussion and had good questions and suggestions. Angela felt she had to make a remark. Allie, you seem to really understand and deal with this. Actually, Allie replied, the law interests me. It's my favorite TV show. The actual practice of law is very different from television, Bill added. Oh, I'm sure it is, Allie said. But I still think it's something I'd like to do. I have an idea, Angela suggested. When you're old enough, maybe you'd like to work with me helping our paralegal team. It would give you a chance to feel like a lawyer. Yeah, that would be great. Watching Allie interact with Bill and Angela reinforced his confidence that she was quite capable of weathering this big storm. She would be fine. All four of them ate a light lunch together, and then Dave and Allie ran errands. They got home around 3:30 p.m. At this point, the gravity of the impending confrontation seemed almost unbearable, and their awkward silence added to that pressure. Dave laid out the evidence and papers on the dining room table and then persuaded Allie to play a game of cribbage to pass the time. They had about an hour left before the family would be shattered. The sound of the garage door opening made Allie and Dave take their places at the table. There was no more acting or hiding behind masks. It was going to be real. Very, very real. Linda walked through the front door with packages in hand and called out, The Chinese food is here! Let's get the party started! Then she saw the grim faces of her daughter and husband sitting at the dining room table. Hey, you two. What's up? Dave said quietly but firmly. Sit down, Linda. She hesitantly approached the table and began to speak. What's going on? Just then she saw a picture of the Tuesday night meeting with Rich. She fell back in her chair, almost missing it. She pulled herself together as tears came to her eyes. An expression of agonizing pain froze on her face. Lowering her head, she repeated, No, 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 no! Forcing herself to raise her eyes, she saw two of her dearest people sitting silently looking at her. The tense expression on their faces spoke clearly of their contempt for her. Please, Dave, don't do what I deserve, she said softly between quiet sobs. She took a tissue from the box they had kindly placed on the table and tried to wipe away enough tears to clear her distorted vision. After a moment's torture, Dave asked softly, What do you think you deserve? She sobbed even harder, spitting out the words, "Please don't leave me. Don't leave me." "You mean the way you threw away our marriage? Our family?" "Oh God, please. It was a terrible mistake," she screamed. Remaining calm, Dave asked softly, "How long did this mistake, as you call it, last?" She hesitated, trying to consider whether she could get away with lying. Unsure of what Dave already knew, she tried to give a safe answer. "It doesn't matter. One time was too many. Please, Dave, can we work on forgetting about it?" "Never mind? Are you serious?" She flinched at the abruptness and loudness of his answer. She finally admitted to herself that he knew. She didn't know how he knew, but he did. "How long?" he called out. She rested her forehead in her hands, resting her elbows on the table. She couldn't look at either her husband or her daughter, not knowing the answer. Only before he met Sonia." "I see," Dave said caustically. "So about 17 years then. I guess 17 years of cheating on me doesn't make any difference to you. Is that what you're telling us?" "No. Of course it matters. It was a terrible, selfish, hurtful act." Allie couldn't hold back any longer. "Oh, really? God, Mom, how could you do that? Do you realize how much you've ruined Dad and me?" Dave stood up suddenly to emphasize his anger. "Who the hell are you, Linda? Who the hell are you?" "I think I know," Allie added. "Let's see. Tramp, whore, adulteress, cheater, liar, traitor. Oh, and how about bitch?" Linda was almost choking. Her bowels and bladder struggled to relieve the internal pressure she was feeling. "Please don't call me names," Linda begged. "Dave, please ask her not to say things like that." "When she says something untrue, I correct her," he replied with anger in his voice. Edit. The members of the broken family were silent for a few moments, except for Linda. She tried to remain calm, but she couldn't stop sobbing. Finally, she managed to ask the question that stirred her heart the most. She knew the answer would crush her. "What are you going to do?" Dave replied, "Go to your room, clean yourself up, and calm down for a few minutes. Your crying is just pissing us off. Then come downstairs and we'll talk for a few minutes before Allie and I leave." "But we need to fix this." "Where are you going?" "That's not your concern, and we certainly won't fix anything in a few hours. Go upstairs," he ordered. Linda staggered up the stairs, and Dave sent Linda's sister the expected message. "All set. She's going to need you. Be there in 30. "Great. We're not leaving until you get here. Just come on in." "Got it." Linda sat on the bed and let her emotions run wild. For the first 5 minutes, she sobbed, tears streaming down her face and horrible thoughts running through her mind. As the tears subsided, her brain calmed down as well. She began to think of ways to keep her family together. She sank down on the bed, and then it hit her. This would no longer be her bed. She had ruined it for no reason. A new wave of tears came. 20 minutes later, she came downstairs, still visibly upset, but more in control. She sat in silence, looking confused and ashamed. She was relieved that Allie hadn't been with her during this part of the conversation. She waited for Dave to take the lead. "First of all, I think you realize you're fired." Linda's tears came again. "Why? I'm good at my job. Why should I be fired?" "Do you really need to ask? I don't know who you are anymore or if I can trust you. Besides, frankly, I don't want you around." She lowered her eyes, trying to regain control of herself, then asked, "What else?" "Here are the papers I'm sure you expect to receive. In the envelope is your severance pay and agreement. Open your own checking account with the check that is in there. As for the documents, familiarize yourself with them. You may want to hire an attorney. I'll pay the initial costs, but if you fight, it's on you." "This all seems so harsh, and it doesn't sound like you, dear. Can't we work on making things right?" Ignoring her words, Dave continued. "Shelley will be here soon to support you. I urge you to go with her for a week or so because I'm not ready to talk. When we're both ready, you can come back here to the guest room until more permanent arrangements can be made." "Can't I just stay?" "Damn it, Linda. I really don't want to see your face for a while." The last sentence felt like a knife stabbed into her chest. She paused for a moment before asking another question she'd been dreading. "Have you made up your mind? Do we really have no chance?" "I don't see a way out, Linda. 17 years, and with my brother. You two have completely ruined 2 marriages and split 3 families." "3? Of course. Us, Sonia and Rich, and my parents now that my brother is dead to me." Her face drained as the weight of her behavior grew heavier. "Oh God, forgive me," she pleaded. "I'm sure God will forgive. I hope I'll be more ready in the years to come than I am now." Shelley picked the perfect time to come in. Dave gave her a hug and then called Allie from her room. Before he left, he turned and cast a brief glance at his wife. Both of them could see the agony on each other's faces. It was in that moment that he fully felt the pain of their lives being torn apart. Two who had become one nearly 18 years ago were now cruelly torn away from each other to become two again. It would take time to heal this wound, if it could heal at all. Next chapter. Dave and Allie knew the plan as they drove in complete silence to their destination. Whether they were ready or not was the question. At first, Dave really wanted to savor what was coming next. Then he realized how many people would be seriously affected in the moments that followed. To be the messenger of what would be the cause of all this pain tore at his heart. And they pulled up to Sonia and Rich's house in his father's car. He knew his parents were here for dinner. He prayed they were okay, but he needed them to see the evidence and the confrontation firsthand. Dave was going to cut his brother out of his life, and they needed to understand why. Dave's heart was pounding so hard he was afraid he was going to pass out. Allie noticed he was struggling, took his hand and smiled. "Dad, it's going to be okay. We're going to make it through this." "Okay, little man. Just remember to stay close to your grandparents and give them the picture when I give it to Sonia. I've got it all figured out. You still haven't answered if you're going to beat Uncle Govt for brains?" "I'm not going to, but we'll see what happens. Remind me we need to talk about your increasing use of profanity," he said, suppressing a chuckle. Allie and Dave entered without knocking just after everyone in the house had finished dinner. The four adults had just gotten up from the dinner table, and the kids were somewhere else in the house. Allie ran to hug her grandparents, and Sonia greeted Dave. "Hi, guys. I wasn't expecting you, but we have plenty of food if you're hungry." Dave kissed his sister-in-law on the forehead. "Thanks, but we've already eaten. I'm afraid we have something unpleasant to discuss." He handed Sonia a picture of Rich and Linda's date, and Allie gave her grandparents her copy. The room was filled with a chorus of, "What's this?" that grew louder as the images became clear. Dave handed the copy to his brother. "Well, dear brother, would you care to explain?" Rich turned white and sank into a chair. "Yes," Dave's father turned to his youngest son. "Can you explain this, Richard?" Sonia pounced on her husband and slapped his face as hard as she could while shouting obscenities and accusations at him. Dave tried his best to contain and calm her anger. "Let's hear him explain." "Yeah, let's hear it," their mother added, and Allie hugged her protectively. "Mehmet!" Rich stuttered and couldn't find the words to get him out of this mess. "That was... shit! Where did you get that picture?" "Wrong answer, asshole," Dave shouted. "I know the truth, so let's hear you admit it." "You know so much, tell the damn story!" Rich spat out angrily. Sonia looked at Dave with pleading eyes. "Dave, please?" "Okay. That piece of garbage and my wife were having an affair. Not just a little fling. Oh no. Those assholes have been doing it since before he even met you, Sonia." She hurled curses and insults, kicking and punching him, seemingly with the speed of a Tasmanian devil. Rich fell to the floor and curled up, trying to defend himself. Finally exhausted, she burst into tears, ran into the living room and threw herself on the couch. Her mother and Allie rushed to help her. Their father walked over to Rich and, standing awkwardly close, asked him in a commanding tone, "Is this true, Richard?" Rich looked at his father with a tear-stained face and simply nodded. "You stupid piece of shit. How could you do that to your own brother and wife? God damn it, son. I don't know how I could be more disappointed. You're just a disgrace." "I'm sorry," Rich pleaded. "I'm really, really sorry, Dave. Leave it alone, asshole," Dave spat out. "There's nothing you can say to make it right. You're dead to me, man. I never want to see you again. Apparently, by the way, you're fired." "Dad," Dave continued, "I don't have a brother. Do you understand?" "Son, give yourself time to cool down." "Papa, I don't have a brother. I never want to see him at Sunday dinners, holidays, weddings, etc. If he's there, I leave. If he accidentally shows up too often, I'll assume you've made a choice. Did I get that right?" "All right, son. I got it. But don't expect Mom and I to cut him out of your life like you're about to do." "I get it. Just don't think it can be fixed." Sonia led the ladies back to the dining room, shouting at the top of her voice as she did so. "I put up with your crap, and this is how you treat your family? Get out! Get out! Pack your things and leave, now!" "Go, Rich!" their father commanded. "And don't think you're staying with us. None of us want to see you right now." Rich looked at his father with tears in his eyes. He looked at his mother, hoping to find tenderness in her, but saw only contempt. He got up off the floor and went to gather his bag. Before leaving the room, Dave had to give him directions. "Listen, asshole, report to Bill Hardwick's office on Monday at 10 o'clock. Turn in your company car to him, and he'll give you a severance package. Read the terms and conditions carefully. Now I need the keys to your office. Hannah and I will sort through your things, and Bill will have them for you to pick up. Rich reached into his pocket, removed the keys to the office from his keychain, and, without making eye contact, handed them to his brother. Dave then walked over to Rich's computer bag, and Rich tensed in panic. I'm taking your computer, Dave said. No, Rich said anxiously. I've got stuff on there. I won't let a former employee access company equipment or information. Anything personal here will be in Bill's possession when you show up on Monday. No, Rich shouted. Let me take him for a few minutes. Rich's reaction set off an alarm in Dave's mind. Something wasn't right about his brother's reaction. Now, more than ever, he was determined to get the computer bag before Rich got to it. Get it into your head that it's company property and it's coming with me. Now back off. Rich pounced on his brother in a complete panic and threw a punch that landed on Dave's cheek. Dave was shocked, but an unhealthy grin appeared on his face. One punch knocked Rich to the floor. Everyone else in the room screamed, trying to break up the fight. To Dave, it was an unintelligible cacophony that had the opposite effect and instead fueled his anger. Finally, his father rolled him onto his back and enclosed him in a bear hug that stopped the barrage. Dave and his father helped each other up. Rich was semi-conscious and was left lying on the floor. Dave's senses returned to him as he surveyed the scene. Sonia, I'm sorry for coming down on you so suddenly. Can we talk privately sometime this weekend? I guess so. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry about that. We understand, his mother replied. We'll talk later, okay? Yes, I'd love to. Allie, I think I've done enough damage for tonight. Are you ready to go home? Let's go, Dad. Turning to his father, Dave asked one more favor. Will you and Mom stay to help Sonia and make sure that idiot leaves quietly? We'll do that, son. Go take care of your family. You mean what's left of it? It's just me and Allie here now. We're here for you too, son? Allie and Dave walked away in silence. Dave's soul flared with regret at the scene he had made, but a large part of him was glad that he had been able to take his anger out on a worthy target. Now a more pressing problem quickly occupied his thoughts, and Allie realized it too. Why is Uncle Rich so angry about his computer bag? What's in there? I'm thinking the same thing, honey. Let's go home and find out. Daddy, are you okay? You were a little out of control. I'm fine. My arm hurts a little, he said with a forced chuckle. I was worried you'd hurt Grandpa when he tried to stop you. I guess I was more than out of control, wasn't I? Definitely. It must have felt good, though. He looked at his daughter and they exchanged an understanding smile. The family left Rich alone, and he loaded everything he could into several suitcases and a bunch of trash bags. Sure, he was upset that his years-long affair had been exposed. But most of all, he was pissed that Dave had taken his computer bag. He needed the damn thing more than ever. He made sure no one saw him loading the lockbox into one of the large suitcases. He would need its contents to last him for a while. After loading his belongings, he left the house without saying goodbye to anyone. He needed to get as far away as possible, so he headed north on the northeast-bound Pennsylvania highway. He needed time, but he didn't know when Dave would learn the truth about his misdeeds. He had to disappear. Rich didn't know how to work under pressure, so his plans were piecemeal at best. He wanted to find a small town in Wyoming or maybe Idaho. He thought he could rent some cheap lodging for cash, unload, and then drive further west to ditch the car. To get back to the apartment he planned to rent, he'd have to steal a car or motorcycle. Another option was a train or bus ride that wouldn't attract the local cops. Even more urgently, he needed to buy a computer. But without the file that was on the laptop Dave now owned, he didn't know how to access his accounts. Shit! He yelled to himself. How did everything turn to shit so fast? In his haste and panic, Rich had overlooked two important things. One was lying on the console next to him. The other was right above the rearview mirror. Dave realized that he and Allie had never had dinner, so he stopped at a fast food place on the way home. They pulled up to an empty house. On the one hand, they were glad they wouldn't have to see Linda, but on the other hand, they were already feeling the emptiness in their lives due to her absence. After eating, Dave took his brother's computer bag into his home office and began to examine its contents. Everything seemed normal until he found an envelope that didn't seem right. The envelope had the logo of one of their big clients, Brandy Water Processes. There was no name or anything else written on it. He opened it and found a check inside. His blood ran cold in his veins when he saw that the check was made out to Rich's cleaning services in the amount of $9,900. And it didn't take Dave long to run through the various scenarios in his mind explaining it. It was a bribe. Rich, what are you up to? he asked aloud. Finding no other papers in his bag, he booted up the computer using the administrator password. It didn't take him long to find a file that a novice would have thought was hidden, but Dave wasn't a novice. Realizing what he had discovered, he called Bill, his lawyer friend, again. Dave, I was hoping you'd call. How did your run-in go? As expected, but I have a new development. I really need your help again, and this time urgently. What do you mean urgent tonight? I'm afraid so. Scotch or beer urgent? Maybe both. Can you come over? I don't really want to leave Allie alone. Should I bring Angela with me? Snip, snip. It's nothing to do with the divorce, but she's always welcome. Bill Hardwick arrived 25 minutes later to see what his friend's latest crisis had to do with. Dave showed him the check and the contents of the computer file. What do you think, Bill? You already know what I think, don't you? Bribery and extortion, right? At the very least. Probably tax evasion and some other crimes. We're talking about federal charges, so the FBI will have to be involved. It also means guaranteed jail time. So what should I do? Let me call my friend at the bureau. If what you say about Rich's mental state is true, we need to act fast. He could definitely run away. Bill left a message on his friend's internal phone at the FBI and returned to Dave, who was waiting for him. Okay, my friend. I think he'll call in the morning. We need to meet him as early as possible if he can accommodate us. Let me take the bag with the computer and the check, as I have a not unreasonable belief that Rich may try to come and get them from you. Good idea. You know, Dave, most people pay for legal services after hours and on weekends. It's becoming a habit, he said with a laugh. What kind of premium did you have in mind? Oh, I don't know. How about a bottle of 14-year-old Balvenie single malt? Deal, my friend. As he was walking out the door, a thought occurred to Bill. Oh, Dave, I guess we shouldn't give Rich the severance agreement as written. Good point. I don't want to make it clear that the FBI is involved. Can you add a delayed payout time, maybe based on a reconciliation of expenses or something? Yes, I can do that. Dave had hoped to talk to Sonia and his parents on Saturday, but put it off when Bill called early that morning. They had a 10 a.m. appointment with Agent Steve Majors at the FBI office in Philadelphia. Allie had left him no choice but to go with him. They were a couple and decided everything together. Dave and Bill showed the agent the evidence, after which he called his supervisor Jack Sims to the meeting. After the introductions, they familiarized themselves with the evidence. Jack rubbed his chin as he pondered the documents lying before him. We've got a spreadsheet with all the bribes, an actual unpaid check from the last bribe, details of an offshore account with how much money? $785,952.00, Dave replied. And all of these funds belong to your company? I believe so. Rich had the right to negotiate the price of any project as long as the projected gross margin didn't fall below 23%. In all the projects I had time to check, the margins were just above that limit. So he clearly gave the lowest price in exchange for a bribe that was just peanuts compared to the savings to the client. And it sounds like you had 14 clients willing to do business that way? You do know that all of them will also be prosecuted, don't you? Yes, sir, Dave replied. Do you know where Rich is? No, Dave replied. He was supposed to meet Bill on Monday to get his severance pay, but the way he acted when I confiscated his computer bag and the fact that his wife and family kicked him out. He's probably on the run, Agent Major said, finishing Dave's thought. Steve, see if you can find his cell phone, Jack ordered. They chatted until Steve returned. He's on the run. Fortunately, he's not smart enough to turn off his phone or the OnStar system in his car. He's in Ohio on Interstate 80 and heading west. Okay, let's follow him and try to apprehend him as late as possible on Sunday. That will give us more time to apprehend him before charges are filed. Work with the local precincts once he's in their area. Tell them to keep an eye on him until it's time to take him on suspicion. With the evidence we have, I think we can have formal charges ready by Monday morning. But we can hold him for 48 hours without formal charges. Bill, Allie, and Dave chatted carelessly on the way home. Before Rich's crimes were solved, he had other plans to punish his ex-brother that hinged on Allie's DNA test. If the test showed that she was Rich's offspring, he would demand 18 years confinement after the division of Rich and Sonia's funds was finalized. Prison seemed a much better option than anything he had in mind. The results of the DNA test no longer affected his retaliation plan, and for that Dave was very grateful. Bill dropped Dave and Allie off, and they immediately arranged to meet Sonia and Dave's parents at Sonia's house. Dave's mom spent almost the entire meeting in tears after learning of her youngest son's act. His father looked so furious that he was ready to spit nails. Sonia, on the other hand, was rightly worried that this might leave her and her boys. Dave, what am I going to do? How are we going to live? I mean, I'm glad the bastard. Oh, Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say that you. It's okay, honey. I understand, she said, snorting. Anyway, Sonia continued, I'm glad he's going to jail. Someday, when we get through this storm, I'll tell you about all the things he did to me. In the meantime, what am I supposed to do? Dave revealed his plans, hoping Sonia would agree. Well, first of all, we need to get you a lawyer. For the divorce, you need to use mine, Angela Hall. If he ends up going to jail, you should get the lion's share of all your joint assets. Then, if what the FBI tells me is true, the money Rich stole from the company will be returned. When that happens, I'll need some of that money to reorganize my business. And what's left, I'll put into a trust fund for you and the boys. You'll have full access to it as needed. Finally, I know you have an associate's degree in business, so I assume you will be able to do the bookkeeping and basic accounting duties. I would be honored to have you take Linda's place in my company. A big plus will be that you can work from home and still take care of your boys. How's that sound? Sonia rushed to him and hugged him with tears of joy and relief. Dave's mom and dad also expressed their support. Dave smiled at Allie, who was glowing with pride at the way her dad always took care of the family. On the way home, Dave tried to ask Allie a pressing question. Babe, we've already talked about maybe doing a DNA test. Have you thought about it yet? I've thought about it, and it's hard for me to decide, but I think we should do it. Are you okay with that? You're not angry? No, I can't be angry about it. And I think you're right. I'll get the test kits and we can get everything done this week. You believe me when I say the results won't change anything about how much I love you, right? I know it won't change how I feel about you. So yes, I believe you. I just want to know. Dave had been very afraid to talk to Allie about this, but now he could relax a little. There was still a lot to do, but as he crossed off one more item on his hellish list, he realized that the end of this nightmare was nigh. The night of his departure, Rich drove all night west on Interstate 80. Just before entering Ohio, he stopped at a McDonald's for breakfast and some rest. Using his iPad, he researched possible destinations. He decided to stop in Sioux Falls. It seemed remote enough, yet large enough to be inconspicuous. He found an inexpensive furnished room online and later called the number listed to reserve it. He could ditch the car near Fargo, which was about 6 hours north of Sioux Falls, and take a bus back. He closed the car door, feeling better. Yeah, he shouted out loud. I have a plan. Once on the road, he began to ponder the chances of getting away with it. The longer he thought, the more frightened he became as it dawned on him how stupid his plan was. However, he felt he had no choice. At the worst possible moment, he considered just giving up and throwing himself on the mercy of the court. But that option scared him even more, so he kept going forward. He thought about his family and what he had done to them. He forced his heart to be hard and focused on his anger. Hunters would be found, and he would be the prey. There was no time for regrets. He drove on until lack of sleep made driving dangerous. He found an inconspicuous parking spot at the Cracker Barrel and rested for a few hours. On Sunday, he woke up just in time for the restaurant to open and decided to eat breakfast before hitting the road. Once on the road, he drove mindlessly as he continued to ponder everything that had happened. As much as he wanted to deny responsibility for his misdeeds, he felt the growing weight of the consequences he would have to face. He loved his family. He felt some resentment, but he loved his brother. He wondered what had gotten him this far. The day was drawing toward evening when he stopped at a diner near Omaha. It was only 200 miles to Sioux Falls, where he found an inexpensive motel. He had an appointment for the morning to get a room, and then he'd take care of ditching the car in Fargo. It was all coming together, so he thought. He walked to the door of the diner, and two men approached him. As soon as they asked if he was Richard Pearson, he knew he was finished. The FBI had found its man. On Monday morning, Dave brought donuts, bagels, and coffee and scheduled an all-staff meeting for 9 o'clock. At 8 o'clock, he met separately with Debbie Gleason and Tammy Fields to tell them the good news about the promotion. At the company meeting, he introduced them as the new sales team. The employees were supportive when they heard all that had happened and were happy that Debbie and Tammy were given more responsibilities. All the unpleasant news and changes were presented. Then, when the shock passed, Dave was able to focus again on continuing his business and personal life. The next morning, Rich was formally charged with numerous felonies. Charges against his bribe-paying clients would follow as the FBI investigated each case. Realizing that he would have to alienate a significant portion of his customers, Dave made plans to change the structure of his business, spinning off part of the manufacturing operation under a new name and developing the distribution business as a new company. He had all the details of the business ready just in time for Linda's return. He would need all his wit and energy to weather this storm. Dave and Allie were enjoying dinner on their first Friday night outing to the Chinese movie theater without Linda when he felt his phone vibrate. Glancing at the screen, he took a deep breath and connected the call. "What, Linda?" Dave noticed Allie cringe at the mention of her mother's name. "Dave, I've missed you. It's good to hear your voice." He replied coldly. "Yes. What do you want?" I, I, I'm ready to come home. Do you mind? Come over late tomorrow morning. We'll talk and see what to do next. Did you hire a lawyer?" "Yes, I hired Rhonda." "We'll talk tomorrow," he said, interrupting her before disconnecting the call. Allie put her hand on top of his. "Are you okay?" He smiled to reassure her. He could tell she wasn't fooled, so he tried to answer. "As well as I can possibly be. How did I do?" "Short, to the point, and on the verge of being rude. I liked it. Just remind me never to piss you off." "Oh, baby, I don't think you'll ever be able to upset me as much as your mom did." They were enjoying their time together in front of a movie that neither of them would be able to remember an hour later. Their thoughts were consumed with all the shit that was going on in their lives. Without Linda, their Friday night tradition seemed strange, but the bond between father and daughter was growing stronger. Next chapter. At Saturday morning, Allie and Dave were sitting in the living room, each buried in their iPads, when Linda walked in. She didn't know what to say, so she didn't say anything. Without looking at her mother or speaking to her, Allie got up and went upstairs to her room. Dave looked up from the screen to see the resentment on Linda's face, then went back to the iPad to finish solitaire. "Hey, Dave!" He held up a finger in the universal sign for wait. Less than a minute later, when the solitaire was over, he hummed disappointedly, closed the iPad, and finally acknowledged her. "Okay, Linda, let's talk. Did you read the papers?" "Yes," she replied, sitting down in her chair. "But can't we talk about how we can stay together as a family? I can't bear the thought of things changing from what we had." "What? We're going to stay married, and you're going to leave whenever you want?" "No, that's not what I mean," she protested. "We've been a happy, loving family. Why does that have to end? I'll never risk it all again. Please, Dave. It's killing me." "And what do you think will happen when your 17-year-old affair is revealed, huh?" "Oh, I get it. You never thought you'd get caught. You'd just have your dirty little secret, and you and my asshole brother could keep having fun and laughing at silly old Dave sitting at home playing with himself." No, it was never like that. We never said anything bad about you, and I will never cheat on you again. I can't stand the thought of either of us going through something like that again." "Are you telling me that you've spent the last 17 years treating me and our family with disrespect without thinking of the consequences? How can I believe that possible consequences will ever stop you from your damned, self-centered behavior?" Her tears came to her eyes again. "Please, Dave. One more chance. Is that too much to ask?" "Hell yes, it is. Once or twice because of some, I don't know, weird psychological attack or too much alcohol, then maybe I could pull it off." Dave stood up, paced the floor, and yelled at Linda for the first time in his life. "But 17 bloody years? What was that? I know he didn't get any bigger. Maybe he had some special skill that melted your resistance? Or maybe you just realized you married the wrong brother and actually fell in love with him? What made having fun with him so irresistible to you, eh? Tell me why." Linda flopped down on the sofa and tried to answer through her sobs. No, I never loved him. I didn't even like him very much. And he was terrible in bed. Selfish. He never thought about me." "Wow," Dave exclaimed quietly. "So, for the sake of having bad fun with a man you didn't even like, you risked everything by continuing to live with him for 17 years. Just imagine how warm and comforting it makes me to know that you cared so little about me that you continued to live after a lousy entertainment and never tried to end your affair. And you still can't tell me why, can you?" "I don't know," she shouted. "I really don't know. It was very stupid and selfish. The first time was a stupid mistake after drinking too much when you weren't home. After that, he threatened to tell you if we didn't date. I don't know. Maybe there was some small thrill in getting away with something indecent. I can't tell you why. I just don't know." "So how now, Linda? Get over it. We're done." Dave looked at her as she sobbed and decided it was time to ease the barrage of anger. "Take a few minutes and pull yourself together. Do you want some water?" "Please," she said with a whimper. He pulled a bottle from the refrigerator and held it out to her. When you're ready, come to the table and we'll discuss paperwork and accommodations. Allie sat on the bed and listened to her parents exchange glances. She didn't want to cry, but she couldn't contain herself. Hearing them argue had broken her heart. It broke even more when she heard her father's pain. But her anger at her mother kept her on her toes. She and her father would make a life together. Her mother, on the other hand, she thought, could rot in her own misery. Dave took the opportunity to use the restroom. He let loose the tears he didn't want Linda to see. He needed to pull himself together, harden himself, and shield himself from the feelings he still had for his wife. From now on, everything had to happen without emotion. Dave walked out of the restroom and noticed Linda walking slowly toward the dining room. He walked in and sat down across from her. She looked up at him. Her face was puffy and her red eyes showed evidence of tears and worry. He saw a sadness in her that he had hoped never to see. Her demeanor indicated utter brokenness. He was torn between enjoying her suffering and wanting to spare her pain. It pained him to see her like this. The confusion of his feelings was not helping either of them. It forced him to make a decision. The yelling and accusations would have to stop, at least on his part. "I'm sorry I yelled at you, Linda. I'll try to keep it together, okay?" Almost too quietly to hear, she muttered, "You can yell at me, curse me, hit me if you want to, if it will allow us to stay together. But I know it won't happen." "No, it won't. Did you read the whole thing?" "Yes," she said with a final whimper. "It's all very fair. Only I can't give up Allie. If she stays with me, the house will belong to me. I will give up some of the money you have offered, but please let Allie stay with me." "I can't do that, Linda. You know she and I have a special bond. And now that you've taken my family and I'm losing my best friend, you think I can do without the person I love most in the world? It's not going to happen. I've lost everything that matters except Allie. Don't force me to do this. Besides, in a few months, when she turns 16, she'll be able to choose for herself. It's foolish to try to go against her wishes now. Dave, you won't lose her. You'll still see her and be with her often. But I need to heal the hurt I've caused and mend our relationship. I can't do that if she's not with me. It won't work the way you think it will. In fact, I think it will have the opposite results. Right now, all she feels for you is rage, and she won't get over that in 5 or 6 months. Living apart will help her get over it, and we can both encourage her to let you back in. Forcefully hold her back, and you won't like the way things turn out." "Damn it, Dave, I'm not giving her up," Linda shouted. They didn't notice that Allie was standing around the corner, listening to this conversation. She jumped out into the street and began screaming in her mother's face, calling her terrible names, pointing out every traitorous act, threatening her with every measure available to her. The tirade went on for over 10 minutes. Linda kept turning away, but Allie moved to stand in front of her. At one point, Allie grabbed her chin and forced her to face the anger she wanted her mother to see. Dave pondered how long he should let her go, then walked over to Allie and hugged her gently to comfort her and pull her away from Linda. He felt relieved that she was letting him take control of herself. Linda was trying to recover from the attack and struggled to keep from bursting into tears. Gaining her composure, she asked, "Allie, please, I love you and need you to be with me." Allie replied in a much calmer tone, "That's not going to happen. Every day I'm going to run to Daddy. And if I'm stuck here with you, I'll make your life miserable. Can you stand being attacked like this every spare minute? Daddy won't be here to tear me away from you. Do you understand, Linda?" "Linda," her mother asked, "what happened to Mom?" "Yes, that's what we all want to know, bitch." Her message was delivered, and Allie walked calmly back to her room, smiling to herself, though the deep sadness brought new tears. Linda had wisely decided that she could not stay in the same house while the divorce was going through. She didn't want to rent her own place because she was going to fight for Allie and their home, so she temporarily settled in with her sister. The divorce line was set, and the family found themselves in court in front of Judge Stan Lawson. Judge Lawson read both divorce petitions and had an idea of how events should unfold. He usually granted requests for counseling, but it wasn't hard to see that it wasn't going to fix this couple. An affair with the husband's brother for 17 years seemed too extreme to overcome. Thus, the only real issue remained the custody of their daughter. If conventional norms were to be followed, he would have preferred that the mother get custody, but the girl was close to the age where she could choose for herself. He decided to see how things played out in the courtroom. The court was convened, and all preliminary issues were resolved. Linda's attorney began the trial. "Your Honor, my client does not want a divorce and has offered to countersue only if reconciliation is deemed impossible. On that basis, she is asking the court to schedule counseling for a minimum of 12 sessions or until the couple reconciles." The judge knew this would happen. "Counselor, Having familiarized myself with the particulars of this case, I see no reason for counseling. It is clear that the reason underlying this petition for divorce makes an attempt at reconciliation through counseling a waste of time and money. The motion is denied. Linda's attorney continued. Then, Your Honor, the main issue is custody of their daughter. My client. Counsel, again recognizing that we have the facts before us, and to save time, I'd like to speak with Allie Pearson in my office. We will break for lunch, and Allie, I invite you to join me and a member of the court staff for a sandwich while we talk. Do you mind? Yes, Your Honor. Linda stood up and began to object. No. I should be with... Mrs. Pearson, you're out of order. No, you should not and will not join our conversation. A court official will be on hand to ensure her safety and well-being. The court will recess for lunch and reconvene at 1:30 p.m. The bailiff escorted Allie into the judge's office, and the judge greeted her with a handshake and a welcoming smile. Hi, Allie. It's very nice to meet you. You too, Your Honor, though I wish my family hadn't been destroyed just so we could meet. Yes, he grinned. Look, outside of the courtroom, you shouldn't be so formal. Thank you, but I think you've earned your title, and not using it is wrong. That's very tactful. Well, young lady, I suppose these are difficult times for you. It's been terrible, but not like it was for my father. I think so. Well, let's look at the sandwich menu and I'll have the bailiff place an order. Then we can chat, okay? Sounds good. After the order was placed, they talked about nothing in particular, so the judge could get an idea of Allie's personality and maturity. To say he was impressed with this young lady would be an understatement. After they had finished eating, the judge suggested they move on to the main topic. Allie, just so you understand, it's rare in cases like this that the mother doesn't get custody. How does that sound to you? Your Honor, it seems to me that this is a lazy approach to the case. It doesn't take into account everything that has happened, and it certainly doesn't align with what I want or what I think is best. Okay, fair enough. So what do you think should happen and why? My place is with my father. That's not just an emotional response from a child. I have a lot of reasons. Would you like to elaborate? Sure. For one thing, my dad and I have always been closer than my mom. Not in a bad way. I loved my mom. Loved? Past tense? Deep down, I'm sure I still do. But the way she dealt with my dad was super cruel. I've never seen my dad cry, and now it happens all the time. She crushed him. She crushed me too. Daddy and I need each other to get over the way she betrayed us. Your mom probably needs you too. Shouldn't you take that into consideration? This is going to sound like I want revenge, but I don't. She did this. It's her fault. Besides, my father isn't the type to be alone. I want to stay with him more than anything. Okay, is there anything else? First, I have a question. How old do I have to be to have the right to choose? 16 years old. That's what I thought. It's 3 months away. If you say I have to live with her, that means in 3 months, Dad and I will have to spend even more money to come and tell you I want to stay with him. Is that it? No. Right now, I can't contain my anger when I'm around her. I know I need to get over it and find common ground with her someday, but forcing me to stay with her so soon after what she did isn't going to make us better friends. In fact, I'll be miserable, and I expect I'll make her miserable. Is that a fact? Let me be honest. I'm going to run to my father every chance I get. When I'm in the same room with her, I will have every intention of making her realize that forcing you to make the wrong choice was a mistake. Oh, so you have plans to get back at her? I wouldn't say that, but yes. She'll realize it was a mistake. I think in less than a week she'll take me to her father herself and tell him to keep me. Care to share your plans? Not really. I see, he said with a chuckle. Just curious. Have you considered becoming a lawyer? I'm already on that path. I'll be helping out on Miss Hall's paralegal team next summer. That's good to hear, Allie. I have to say, when you take the exam, I wouldn't want to be an opposing counsel, he reflected. Why don't we get you back to your father? That depends on the circumstances. Will you let me stay with him? I'll make my decision soon, and then everyone will know what I've decided. I know the judge is considered wise and fair. I am counting on it very much, and I hope I will like you as much in an hour as I do now. Are you blackmailing me? He asked with a friendly smile on his face. No, Your Honor. Just telling the truth, the whole truth and nothing but. They smiled, shook hands, and parted ways. When Allie found her father, she told him that she thought everything had gone well. They would soon find out how well. When the court reconvened, the judge immediately pulled himself together. I had a pretty good conversation with Allie. Both parents should be proud of this amazing girl. She laid out her thoughts to me in a calm and professional manner, and I took them into account in my decision. Linda and her lawyer were discussing something, and Linda couldn't help herself. "Tell him," she said loud enough for the whole room to hear her. The judge, clearly annoyed, banged his gavel and stared at them. "Counselor, do we have a problem?" "I apologize, Your Honor. My client has made me aware of a problem that may affect your decision." "Good. Let's hear it. And it better be good." "Yes, Your Honor. Mrs. Pearson has indicated that there is a strong possibility that Mr. David Pearson is not the biological father of her daughter. If that is the case, it could be argued that he does not have sufficient grounds to claim custody. Counselor, this is completely irrelevant to custody claims in Pennsylvania, and you should know that. However, for the benefit of Mr. and Miss Pearson, is there any evidence of that, Mrs. Pearson?" "Not yet, Your Honor." "Your Honor," her attorney interjected, "we move to stay the proceedings pending the DNA test and analysis." Dave turned and saw that Allie answered him with a knowing smile. His attorney stood up to respond. "Your Honor, anticipating Mrs. Pearson's tactics, we have the results of the DNA test conducted by an accredited laboratory. The results are certified and accompanied by a duly certified and notarized sworn statement from the agency that conducted the analysis." He handed copies to the court officer and Linda's attorney, then continued. "As you can see, the results prove conclusively that Mr. David Pearson and Miss Allegra Pearson, or Allie as she is also known, are father and daughter." "Very good, Counselor Hall. That's interesting and I'm sure will bring relief to the father and daughter. In any case, based on the laws of this state, the motion for continuance and scheduling of the DNA test is denied." Linda cried as her attorney tried to comfort her. Judge Lawson continued. "Now, as I said, while it is customary to award primary custody to the mother, I believe it would be best for all parties to grant Miss Pearson's wishes and accept the petition presented by Mr. Pearson. Mrs. Pearson and Allie, it pains me to see mother and daughter estranged from each other, and this whole procedure of dissolving a happy marriage hurts me more than I can express." He paused and took a deep breath. "The petition for divorce filed by Mr. Pearson has been granted. You should both receive a final judgment within 6 to 8 weeks. At this point, I wish you three the best of luck. Court is adjourned." Allie rushed to her father and clung to him with all her might. As they began to walk out, Linda walked up to them with fire in her eyes. "Well, you won. I hope you're happy now," she said reproachfully to Dave, as if she expected him to gloat. He turned and replied softly, "What are you turning into, Linda? No one won here tonight. It's a defeat for all three of us. Go home and we'll discuss the details in a few days." "Ed!" She collapsed on the bench in the courtroom while her lawyer tried to comfort her. She muttered quietly, "But I love you. This isn't right." Dave heard her, but chose to keep walking as he and Allie clung to each other. In the weeks that followed, all the horrible consequences caused by Rich and Linda's foolish choice were over. Rich pleaded guilty to avoid a trial, fines, and potentially a lengthy prison sentence. He had to disclose all hidden bank accounts and safes and agreed to spend 8 years in federal prison. Linda got an acceptable position with a company 25 miles away and bought a townhouse there with funds provided by Dave. It was perfect for her. She was close enough to see Allie, but far enough away to avoid seeing former friends who found her presence unwelcome. This was the fresh start she needed. Dave turned his attention to restructuring the company. Debbie quickly became a shining star in sales, increasing her customer base through a large number of large orders from new clients. More amazingly, she retained almost all of the clients Dave expected to lose due to the bribery scandal. Tammy had also become Debbie's perfect teammate, keeping internal support running smoothly. Dave knew he would have to expand the sales department when his distribution business fully spun up, and Debbie was the perfect candidate to lead the entire sales team. When it came to female companionship, Dave showed little interest, although he was inundated with offers from both friends and his loving daughter. Unmarried ladies from church seemed to be lining up to get to the very desirable would-be bachelor. He missed the companionship of Linda more than he expected, but he wasn't going to rush things. In the weak moments when he allowed himself to ponder his options, only one woman occupied his thoughts. On Wednesday morning, months after the judge had rendered his decision, Hannah walked into Dave's office with the morning mail. "Hey, boss, looks like the divorce papers came in." He opened the envelope to inspect the contents. "Yeah, looks like Judge Lawson was accurate. It's been 7 weeks now. Looks like I'm a free man. How do you feel about that?" Dave pondered his emotions before answering her question. "It's a real mix of feelings, I think. Sadness and happiness, relief and anxiety. If you put all my feelings together, you wouldn't get a single feeling. The feeling I feel most is a sense of anticipation. What Linda and I had was special. Now that it's gone, I want to find special again. Do you know what I mean? Yes, I do, she replied with a half smile, wondering if it was time. Turning to leave, she hesitated at the door and slowly closed it. Still with her back to the door, as if afraid to see his reaction, she said quietly, Dave, I want something special too. I need to confess something I've been afraid to say. But here it is. I love you. I started loving you the day you interviewed me. You and Linda kept trying to convince me to find someone, but I needed someone untouchable or at least unavailable. You don't have to say anything now, but if you're interested, just ask me out when you're ready. I already know my answer will be yes. She didn't notice Dave move silently right behind her back. As soon as she finished her confession, he gently put his arms around her, kissed her neck, and whispered the words she wanted to hear. Dinner tonight? Still in his arms, she turned to see his bright smile and the sparkle in his eyes. My place at 6, she suggested. I'll cook. Her face lit up with a wide smile. And wear something casual. The bottle of wine and the wonderful lasagna disappeared, as if dinner were an afterthought. The newfound lovers couldn't wait to see how their deep friendship might blossom. It didn't take long for it to blossom. Unable to hold back any longer, Hannah whispered in his ear, I want to be with you. Dave smiled and whispered back, I can think of lots of excuses. With, at, under, in, for. She pulled away and looked at him with loving mischief in her eyes. Look, mister, I want lots of prepositions, clauses and all. And I want them now, she exclaimed with a note of playful desperation. He wanted nothing more than to take her to the bedroom and spend the evening. Next chapter. For the next 2 weeks, Dave and Hannah were together every night. After a romantic dinner at Hannah's house, they would sit together. Dave was sure of what he wanted, and the time was right. Dave whispered in her ear, I think it's time. Without another word, he lifted her off the couch and carried her into the bedroom. Dave's thoughts and dreams began to fall into perfect harmony, and he saw his world becoming even better than he had hoped. Several minutes passed before Dave shared his thoughts. Hannah, all my hesitation is gone. I'm ready to let my feelings come out. Over the past weeks, I have found that spark and chemistry I knew we would have together. I feel like my heart has unclenched, and I can say I love you with all my soul. If you say yes, I never want this to end. She rolled over on top of him and put his sword away in its scabbard. Will that answer you? You have me, and I have you. If you're absolutely certain this isn't a fracture for you, then I want us to never part. It's going to make walking a little difficult, but I'm ready. Smartass, she exclaimed playfully. You know what I mean? Yeah, I do. I think my friends will tell us to take it slow, considering everything that's happened recently, but I don't care what they think. It might seem fast to you, she said. To me, it was something I had to live with for 7 years. Well, I know we were both concerned that things would go back to the way they were, but it felt right to me. Later, they drifted into slumber. Joy filled Hannah, Dave, and Allie's home. 6 months after their first date, they were married in their church. In keeping with their character, the casual and informal reception was a pig roast in the spacious backyard. With 200 guests in attendance, the pool and other entertainment gave the children something to do. For the adults, a large marquee with a dance floor and bar was set up. A small band provided the musical accompaniment. There was plenty to celebrate. As expected, some family members and friends expressed surprise at how quickly they had decided to get married, especially since Hannah was 8 years younger than Dave. The explanation was simple. They quickly realized they had found the right partner. Plus, Hannah was 3 months pregnant, and she and Dave were only 30 years old, and they planned to have many more children. As the party was winding down, a familiar face appeared in the backyard. Oh, look, Hannah said to Dave. Linda's here. Let me go greet her. Both women weren't entirely sure how their visit would turn out. Hannah's fears were quickly dispelled when Linda smiled and hugged her friend. Congratulations, Hannah. It sounds like a terrific holiday. Well, you know Dave and his pig roast? How about you? You look great. I'm still working on myself, but I'm much better now than I was 7 or 8 months ago. Look, I want you to know that I think it's great that you and Dave found each other. Please believe that I wish you nothing but the best. You are 2 of my favorite people. Dave joined them and hugged Linda warmly. Hi, Linda. Really glad you came, but I was hoping you'd come a little earlier. I thought about it, but I didn't want to be a pesky ex taking attention away from you two. As I told your lovely new wife, I'm very happy for you both. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, are you ready for Allie to spend 3 weeks with you while we go on our honeymoon? I'm looking forward to it. I hope she doesn't dread it too much. Don't tell her I said that, but she's looking forward to being with you while we're away. I think she feels guilty about some of her actions and words, but I told her that strong emotions need to be let out if she's going to overcome them. You two are going to be fine. So, are you going to go meet my emotional support animal? What? You still have Banjo, right? Of course. He'll be with Allie when she stays with you. Then what's an emotional support animal? Oh, it's a pig. He's been roasted, of course, but he does give me positive vibes. Come and get a plate. Any threat of tension vanished when Hannah and Linda laughed as they threatened to throw Dave into the pool. No two divorces or breakups are the same. People don't react in the same script when something bad happens. After learning of Linda's infidelity, Dave couldn't imagine ever finding joy in his life again. Allie grieved over the breakup of her loving family. At the same time, Hannah felt doomed to either live without love or settle for something or someone less than she wanted. All of them were broken. But in the end, Dave, Hannah, and Allie found more joy than they had before everything fell apart. With all their hearts, they wished the same for Linda and Sonia. Time would tell. Epilogue, 10 years later. The pastor asked the congregation, "Who gave this woman the right to marry?" Dave answered clearly and firmly, "Her mother and me." He then took Allie's hand and passed it to the groom, Nathan Lawson, grandson of Judge Stanley Lawson. Dave turned to take a seat next to Hannah, who was shedding happy wedding tears. Sitting next to them were Linda and her fiancé. Hannah and Linda were good friends again, and Dave kept his distance from his ex-wife. At least he no longer felt the need to isolate himself from Linda. His love for Hannah and their 3 children more than healed the anger and hurt. Hannah whispered to him as he sat down, "Mothers, plural. Nice move, Mr. Pearson." He looked back at the wedding party and smiled proudly at his 10-year-old daughter, Sarah, who was his sister's maid of honor. His youngest daughter, Jenna, was a flower girl, and Dave Jr., now 3 years old, was a ring bearer. True to his contemplative nature, he basked in the glow of a heart filled with love and pride. A prayer of gratitude burst from his soul. Allie graduated from Temple University Law School, top of her class. It was also where she met and fell in love with Nate. While they were dating, her father and Judge Lawson became close friends, so the blending of families couldn't have been easier. Nate focused on criminal law and moved to Bill Hardwick's office, while Allie prioritized family law and became a new member of Angela Hall's team. The changes Dave has made to his business have been more successful than he expected. In his 48th year, Dave and Hannah planned to retire when he turned 55. He was by no means a billionaire, but his stock portfolio and excellent financial planning made that goal easily achievable. Sonia married a terrific guy who managed the eastern territory of the large pump company that Dave's business represented. In addition to the 2 boys Sonia had with Rich, the couple now had a little girl who had just turned 4. Dave's parents had already retired and were enjoying good health as they transitioned to outdoor activities. This included them passing on Sunday family dinners to Dave and Hannah. One Sunday, about 3 months after Allie's wedding, Dave's father pulled him aside after the meal. "Son, I know I made you a promise, but this time I'm going to break it. Rich is leaving next week, and he'd like to see you and the rest of the family before he goes. Can he come over this afternoon?" "Actually, I've been thinking about contacting him since he got out of prison. I heard he joined a missionary team or something?" "Yes. They help poor villages, build schools, and so on. He's going to Tanzania and will be on the team as a water purification specialist." "How did he get involved with them while in prison?" "He's grateful to his cellmate for really turning his life around. He got close to the prison ministry team and asked them to help him find a ministry he could join upon his release. After learning about his abilities and background, they set things in motion. He had studied Swahili and, from what I understand, spoke it fluently. He was also allowed to take a lot of required courses while he was serving his sentence so that he was ready to go upon release. He spent several months after his release completing his training and collecting monthly aid. He can come visit us, but Sonia and her family might not react well. He's already visited them a few times. They're fine." "God, Sonia never told me." "You're blaming her? You made it clear you wanted nothing to do with him." "Yeah, I guess you're right." "So what do you think of your brother at this point?" "What he was doing seemed to be aimed directly at me, Dad. Maybe he didn't mean it that way, but it seemed that way to me. The moment everything fell apart, I remember thinking it would have been kinder of him to just put a bullet in me. He had infringed on almost everything that mattered to me. If it hadn't been for Allie, I don't know what I would have done." "Yeah, you two were good at sticking together." Yeah, thank God. Son, you mentioned that Rich seemed to be targeting you. I don't think that was his primary motivation, but on a subconscious level, I think you might be right. He and I had a strange but interesting conversation the day he came out. He was apologizing, and I believe he was sincere. But then he said something that really struck me. He said that he never felt like he was part of our family, and that you were always the perfect son that he could never compare to. Your mom and I were racking our brains trying to figure out why he felt that way. You guys have never held me up as an example or shown me any favor. I don't get it? He admitted it himself. He said it was all on his conscience. He knew you were a better student and had talents he didn't have, so he drew conclusions that weren't true. He knows that now. I think I owe it to him and myself to talk to him and clear the air. Thank you, son. I knew you'd understand it that way. Dad, you know I usually spend a lot of time thinking. Like during your half-hour morning visits to the latrine? Okay, smartass, Dave replied, and they laughed. Like I said, a few nights ago I was sitting alone on the back porch while Hannah put the kids to bed. The air was cool and the smells from the flower garden put me in a wonderful state of mind as I watched the sun set behind the trees. I felt an overpowering joy and peace as I thought about how things had turned out after the confusion of 10 years ago. Sonia is remarried to a good man and couldn't be happier. She has done a great job raising her boys, and her new husband has been a huge influence on her. The money Rich stole was found and returned. I thought he had destroyed my client base in the process, but instead, I found some real stars to take his place. It also forced me to restructure the business, which greatly improved its growth and bottom line. The restructuring into distribution also led to Sony's new husband. So what are you saying? Dad, I never thought it could be like this, but it turns out that what Rich has done has been a huge blessing. Dad noticed he hadn't mentioned something important. But your marriage was ruined, son. You and Linda were the perfect couple. Don't you think that was a tragic end to a beautiful love story? Of course it did, Dad. But look at Hannah. I'm madly in love with her. I love everything about her. I wouldn't give her up or trade her for anything, including what Linda and I had. Do you love her more than Linda? More than I do? How can I appreciate that without running my feelings through the filters of all the crap that happened? I still have feelings for Linda, of course, but I'll never feel the same way I did 15 years ago. The main thing is that I have feelings for Hannah that are at least as strong as Linda's, but I've decided to give myself and all my love to Hannah. That's good to hear, but you still haven't answered my question. About Rich? Yes. How do you feel about him? Everything I said about how things turned out applies to my attitude toward Rich as well. I hate what he did, but the way things turned out gives me reason to be grateful. He paid with more than 8 years of his life, so I have no anger or desire for revenge. It's a bit like how I feel about Linda. Do I love him? Of course I do. He's my brother. If he needed a kidney or something, I'd help. But I'll never be able to trust him or care for him the way I did 15 years ago. I think I understand you, son. I have to say that your attitude toward everything that's happened is heartening. I'm not sure I would have had the courage to find the positives in it like you did. Well, think of all the people involved. Sonia is in a better place now. My business is thriving. My marriage to Hannah and our 3 children with her is a joy beyond anything I've ever had. Even Rich has matured and returned to his faith because of the prison experience. He has found a better version of himself. Linda, sad to say, is probably the only one who didn't come out of prison in a better situation. Allie tells me she's happy, but still pines for the life we had together. Son, you're a goddamn Pollyanna, you know that? Is that a bad thing? No, but I can't forget how broken you were. Yeah, I was. But during one of my contemplation sessions, it occurred to me that what Rich did was like taking my prized china and smashing it on the floor. God, in his mercy, helped me pick it up and put together a new mosaic from the pieces, even more beautiful and precious. So you mean to say that what was broken is now better than ever? Exactly. But not just better, Dad. It's much better for me. The end. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video. When I was in high school, I was madly in love with the head cheerleader, and for a while I thought she loved me. We were each 18 years old. I thought we were the perfect couple and knew we were destined to be together for the rest of our lives. Throughout the school year, you couldn't put a piece of paper between us, that's how close we were. One evening in May, I happened to drive past her car in the school parking lot. I couldn't figure out why her car was parked there, because she was supposed to be with the cheerleaders at a baseball game that night. As I approached the car, it seemed to be shaking. Looking out the window, my world came crashing down. The love of my life was having fun with some idiot. As I raced down the road, wandering without purpose, some part of me considered jerking the steering wheel sharply to the right. There were plenty of trees I could crash into. But I didn't and headed home. Perhaps my folks would have some good advice on how to deal with my broken heart. When I got home, my parents weren't there. Instead, there was a note that they were going out on one of their dates and would be home late. It was as if a shroud of sadness had descended on me. I went into my father's office and tried the door of the gun safe. I knew it held his birdshot gun, a double-barreled Beretta 12-gauge, and a service pistol left over from his days on the police force. My father's precaution in locking up his firearms may have saved my life that night. I was that upset. Now, as an adult, thinking back on that night, I wonder why it affected me so much. But the teenage brain is not noted for its rationality, and what seems insignificant to an adult can be overwhelming to an 18-year-old. I laid down on my bed, waiting for my parents to return, but fell asleep. I woke up the next morning, still dressed and covered with a blanket. When I opened the window shade, the light of the morning sun streamed into the room. It was a gorgeous spring day. As I walked down the stairs and into the kitchen, I saw my mom making breakfast and my dad reading the newspaper with an unchanging cup of coffee in his hand. You could tell from their looks and body language that the date night was a success. These two people still loved each other after 25 years of marriage. I was overcome with shame at the thought of how hurt they would be if, when they came home, they found the bloody, lifeless body of one of their children. The three of us spent the next hour talking. I was lucky to have that kind of relationship with my parents. I left the table with a deeper understanding of my own importance and plans for the near future. I didn't say another word to the girl. Any attempt by her to speak to me was met with icy silence. I thought about it, but I didn't even ask her to return the expensive necklace I had given her the previous month for her 18th birthday. A necklace I had spent a month's salary on while working part-time at the local grocery store. After a week of this treatment, she stood at my front door with tears in her eyes. My grandmother was in the house that day and opened the door. After listening to the girl's pleas, my grandmother simply said, "What are you waiting for, young lady? You've been caught having fun with another guy? My grandson is not going to stand by and make a fool of himself. You better get on with your life because Jeff did." With those words, she closed the door. It was too late to find a date to prom. My ex-girlfriend went with that creep. I don't know if they had a good time at the dance, but their classes after prom. When he got them replaced, I'm sure the sugar in the gas tank may have further delayed their fun. This story had a lasting impact on me. I became a little colder, less emotional, and vowed to never be a jerk again. More than one blossoming love interest was cut short when I felt a girl couldn't be relied upon for fidelity. 10 years later. Jeff, what the hell is this? My wife, Emma, stood over my chair, holding a piece of notebook paper in one hand and a used book in the other. I hadn't had time to read this book, recently purchased online from a used bookseller, and it was sitting in the bookcase with the others on my to-read shelf. For some reason, I ignored the paper and focused on the book because that's what I thought she was asking about. But I was puzzled because Emma never gets upset when I buy books. In fact, she usually reads and appreciates the books I choose. It's The Wrong Man, James Neff's comprehensive investigation of Sam Shepard's trial for the destruction of his wife. You know, The Fugitive. Now it was Emma's turn to be perplexed. "Not the book, mister?" She shoved a notebook sheet under my nose. This. She was practically screaming now. I tried to take the paper, but Emma seemed reluctant to let go of it, as if it were something important. But finally, she let it go. I got up from my leather reading chair, put aside the Kafka's The Trial I was reading, and read the words on the paper. They were handwritten in a distinctly feminine cursive. Jeff, you need to divorce that witch you're married to before she drives you so crazy that one day you destroy her. I will wait for you, but not forever. Your love, Daddy. Postscript. Just so you know, we had fun one last time until I see the divorce papers. Signed. I reread the note twice, trying to make sense of it all. Could this really be someone's joke? I looked up from the note and saw the fire in Emma's eyes. Emma, I have no idea who this is from or what it means. Where did you find this? Emma held out the book to me. It was in your book, Don't play dumb just because you were too stupid and left it there. I spent the next half hour trying to explain that the book had been bought online and I hadn't had a chance to look through it. The note must have belonged to the previous owner, but what are the odds that the owner's name matches mine? Speaking of a perfect storm, the timing for this couldn't be worse. First off, I made the mistake of getting close to a female coworker in the office last year. Sharon Roberts and I flirted a bit, and it ended up going out to dinner one night, our first dinner together. Sharon cut to the chase and proposed to me. I was tempted. It was a time when my marriage to Emma was at its lowest point. We were both spending too little time on marriage and too much time at work trying to woo our bosses. Plus, Sharon was like a dream come to life. I didn't give in to temptation, but Sharon's offer stirred reality and conscience in my stupefied brain. I knew I had to go home and fix my marriage. I loved Emma. When I got home that night, I told Emma that we needed to fix what I thought was broken, but I had made a huge mistake in admitting my near intemperance. Things hadn't been smooth sailing for a few weeks, but I'd managed to convince Emma that she was the only woman in my life, and she seemed to believe me until this evening when Emma found the note in the book. Second, I had been working more in the office for the past 3 months. It was justifiable. I was looking at a nice bonus and possibly a promotion if I could complete the current project on time and on budget. I had a number of good reasons for wanting this promotion, but one of them overrode all others. It was no secret that Emma's parents believed she had married a man below her station. Emma's father was a CFO at the largest independent bank in the state. He went to an Ivy League school. Emma's mother was a graduate of Vassar University. Emma went to Princeton. I graduated from Kent State University. My MBA from Wharton hardly made a difference in her parents' world. Had I been promoted, I would have been on my way to the top by now. But lately, time away from home had become a point of contention. Third, Emma has been spending more time lately with her mother, a woman who has never warmly regarded me or my relationship with her daughter. Last week, Emma and I had a pretty big fight about time spent at work. Words were said, and unpleasant ones on both sides. But the worst part was that when Emma said that her mother was right about me, that I was a cheat and unworthy of her, I called her mother a witch. Yes, I used the same word the author of the cryptic note used to describe Jeff's other wife. Could this nightmare have gotten any worse? Yes, it could, and it did. Now you, the reader, are probably questioning the accuracy of my story. Many of you, and almost all of the women reading, are thinking, give up, you've been caught. But I swear I'm innocent. I ended up falling asleep on the couch, never being able to convince Emma that the note wasn't mine. Emma locked our bedroom door. On Thursday, I went to work and told my boss that I needed to give up a little extra hours. He is divorced himself and said he understood me. I brought Emma a bouquet of flowers. At least she didn't throw them in the trash and even thanked me when she put them in the vase. We slept together that night, but the frost in the air persisted. By Friday evening, things still hadn't thawed out. Emma decided to spend the weekend at her parents' house. That wouldn't help. I asked Emma not to go, but she said she needed time to cool down and think. I almost said that her mother was the last person she should be with to cool down and think about it, but I knew enough to keep silent. No sense in turning her against herself, which always happened when it came to her in-laws. I spent the weekend looking at those flowers and thinking about what would help repair my marriage. I took long walks with our dog Samson and thought a lot about how much I really love Emma. Saturday night, I sent her a text. Would you consider counseling? The reply was short. We'll talk when I get home Sunday night. Sunday came and went. Sunday night, I received a second message. Drank too much at dinner. We'll be home Monday. I started to get angry. I was innocent, damn it. I knew a weekend at her mom's was a bad idea. On Monday, Emma came home early in the morning, just before I left for work. I got an unconvincing kiss and a "I'll talk to you tonight," after which she ran upstairs to change for her job. I worked a full day on Monday, but left work in time to make Chinese takeout in time for her to get Chinese food ready by the time she walked through the door at 7. The meal was quiet, not friendly, but relatively polite. We opened the fortune cookies, I poured a couple glasses of aperitif, and Emma started the conversation. Jeff, I don't trust you, and that's not the best attitude to have toward your husband. Mom says I should suck it up and leave. Let's leave your mother out of this conversation. You know she never liked me. Let's limit it to what you and I need. I need space and time to think. I suggest you move into the spare bedroom until we get everything sorted out. I hated that idea. What married couple solves problems by sleeping in separate rooms? What about what I suggested? Counseling? Maybe, but not right now. Right now, I need time to think for myself. I couldn't help myself. Does think for yourself include your mother? My mom only wishes me well. If I need to talk to my mom, I will. That was the end of it. I moved my stuff into the spare room and never got to sleep that night. Looking back, first, a little backstory. I met Emma when I was doing consulting work for a non-governmental organization, NGO, where she was an intern. It was the year after I graduated from Wharton, one of the Big Four accounting firms hired me, and after my first year I was assigned to help the NGO with their computer systems. It was a pro bono job. Our regional manager was on the NGO's board of directors, and I was assigned to them for the duration of the change. In the end, everything turned out well. The NGO got a new server system and I met my future bride. Emma Taylor would be a senior at Princeton in the fall and would spend the summer as an unpaid intern. The more time I spent with this woman, the more I fell in love. We dated throughout that summer. Emma was smart, confident, and best of all, had the body and face of a Victoria's Secret angel. Although Emma came from an upper-class background, I was particularly impressed with how well she treated everyone in the office, from the mail clerks to the president. There was always a please, thank you, or other kind word. Physically, Emma was out of my league. I'm a good-looking guy and big enough to play the edge defender position at Kent State. Emma at 5'10" looks good next to my 5'10", even when she wore her 5-inch heels. Where we diverged was in social status. Emma was an only child in a two-family household whose backgrounds were not usually the same as my more middle-class parents. My mother taught second grade at a Catholic school, and my father owned a mechanic store. I am one of 4 children, all graduated from college, and all were fairly successful middle class. Mom and Dad were rightfully proud of their children. Dad and Mom instilled in us a work ethic that helped me succeed. After only 2 years at the accounting firm, I was hired by one of our clients. We had just completed a successful consulting job with TMG2 Engineering, Inc., and had saved the company millions in the transition from mainframe to server-based computing. TMG2 offered me the job because I didn't have to travel and the pay was comparable. I still work at TMG2, now as a project manager in the information technology department. My project at the time of writing this story was to migrate our systems to the then new concept of cloud computing. Few companies of our size had moved to the cloud. I had to convince the board to do so, and if it worked out as I expected, and if I promised the board, I had a chance to get the proposed position of CIO. Until now, the IT department had been run by the CFO, and he had been a strong supporter of the new position. Tuesday morning, I woke up in the spare bedroom. It took me a few moments to get my bearings, but when I went downstairs, the coffee was ready. Emma was upstairs in the shower. I considered joining her for a moment, but decided to give her the time she had asked for. After drinking a cup of coffee, I headed to the guest bathroom and began to get ready for work. All week, the relationship remained strained. Emma had been spending long days at work, so I decided to do the same and get back to my project. I think my boss was pleased. He probably thought my marriage problems were solved and I didn't give a hoot. Friday afternoon, I sent Emma a text. "Can I take you out to dinner tonight?" "You pick the restaurant." 10 long minutes later, I got her reply. "Going to my mom's, spending the weekend." This was ridiculous. I immediately called her and she politely replied, "How can we work on our marriage or your trust issues if you're not home?" "I told you I needed time. It's only been a week." "You have to respect my wishes." I tried my best to remain calm and made my case to her for staying the weekend, but all my arguments went unheeded. She finally agreed to consider my third request for counseling. "Will I see you before you leave for Manhattan tonight?" "No, I've already packed my bags. I'll probably be back Monday night. I'll stay the weekend and go straight to work from New York." Another weekend, just Samson and me, 2 more days of me trying to figure out how to fix what was broken. On Saturday, I had an idea. I found the number of the used bookstore where I'd bought The Wrong Man and talked to the salesperson. "Hello, I bought a used copy of The Wrong Man from your store. You shipped it to me 3 weeks ago." Inside was a romantic note written by someone named Jeff, which is also my name. My wife found the note and is accusing me of having an affair. I need to speak to Jeff, who the book belonged to. The salesman had the nerve to laugh. Man, what are the odds? A book called The Wrong Man, owned by two guys named Jeff, and even with a love note inside. The clerk was pissing me off. Look, this isn't funny. My wife needs assurances that I'm not the Jeff who got the note from this woman. Does your system track buyers and sellers? Yes, if the guy is registered with us. A lot of people who sell us their used books have accounts and are in our system. But I can't give you a name or phone number. What if you take my name and phone number and contact the other Jeff and ask him to call me? I can do that. What's your name so I can trace the book? Jeff Parker. As in the author? I was puzzled. What author? He laughed again. T. Jefferson Parker. He writes mysteries. This conversation was idiotic, but I had to ask. What does the letter T stand for? I don't know. Maybe Thomas's? Your guess is as good as mine. I've never heard of him. I don't read fantasy mysteries. All right, forget that Parker guy. I'm Jeffrey Parker, not Jefferson, and I don't have a T in my name. I gave him my phone number and was pleasantly surprised when my phone rang 20 minutes later. My name is Jeff, and I'm told you have a found note written to me. Is this some sort of blackmail? No, it's not blackmail. I bought a book called The Wrong Man's That Belonged to You. Inside was a note from a woman named Terry. I need you to tell my wife that the note was written to you, not me. The note was in a book? Hell, I've been looking everywhere for that stupid bitch's note. If my wife found it, I'd be dead. I can't believe it ended up in that book. Jeff, pay attention. I need you to tell my wife what happened. No way. I dodged that bullet. Terry is past it, and I'm still married, and I'm going to keep it that way. He hung up. It took me 5 minutes to calm down and gather my thoughts. I dialed the number that popped up in the received calls log on my cell phone. It answered. Hello? Jeff, it's Jeff. I've changed my mind. This is blackmail. If you don't send me a notarized statement that Terry sent you a love note, your wife will get a notarized letter from me with a copy of Terry's note. How's that sound, man? That's cold. Probably not as cold as it's been in my house since Terry's note was found by my wife. Okay, but you'll promise it's over, right? I promise. Just send a statement, remember? It has to be notarized or my wife won't believe it. Here's my address. Don't hesitate, get it done early in the week. Looking back, 2, becoming lovers. Emma and I were working for an NGO and had only been dating for 5 weeks when we first made love. By the time the summer was over, Emma and I had become very exclusive. During her senior year, I spent most weekends driving 60 miles to Princeton. We spent Thanksgiving at her parents' apartment near Central Park. While she wasn't openly hostile, the coldness coming from her mother was obvious, but I figured I would eventually win her over, most people reacting positively when I tried to befriend her. Emma spent the winter break with me visiting my parents. Emma showed no signs of discomfort during the week while we visited my parents' house, a small but cozy craftsman-style home popular in their Columbus suburb. My parents loved Emma, and she reciprocated their affection. Emma's parents didn't put up any obstacles as long as we dated during her senior year of high school. In retrospect, I think Lois and Jonathan Taylor assumed that this was her fling. I was her first exclusive relationship that lasted more than a few months. Their approach was to sit back and let things fade away naturally. This approach had always worked in the past, and there was no reason to believe it wouldn't work for the weirdo from Ohio. By June, we were engaged. With a decent income and a relatively stable schedule at TMG2, I asked Emma to marry me, and she agreed. Emma appreciated that we would be living in Philadelphia, and visiting her parents in Manhattan would not pose a hardship. Now that I had proposed and Emma had said yes, her mother panicked and began lashing out at Emma to get her to change her mind. Emma confronted her mother, insisting that I was the one, and she was getting married. Eventually, her mother agreed, helped plan the wedding, but never stopped trying in very subtle ways to undermine our marriage. I didn't realize how serious she was until much later. Her parents' attitudes have complicated my choices lately as well. Should I be free to spend more time with my wife, who is now pursuing her career? Or should I spend that time working to become a C-level manager in her company, earn a position and income she could be proud of, and perhaps show her parents that she had not made a mistake in choosing me as her husband? This is the same choice that many young professionals face. Not many find the perfect balance. Emma's mood had not improved by the time she returned Monday from her parents' home after that second weekend. I decided to wait for an email from the other Jeff before approaching her and continued to sleep in the guest room. I also did something I swore I'd never do: read her email. While Emma was showering and getting ready on Tuesday morning, I opened her laptop and logged into her email program. There were too many to read in a short period of time, so I plugged in an external hard drive and dumped the contents of her inbox and other folders. Of course, like most computer users, Emma didn't delete the emails after deleting them. I managed to read 2 emails from her mother before I turned off the laptop and knew that further reading would lead to some interesting revelations. After Emma left for work, I spent an hour reading. I hated to violate Emma's personal space, but there wasn't much choice. Her mother and I were waging a war on Emma's mind and our marriage all fair, right? Plus, the emails proved that I was right to be concerned. In one of them, her mother urged Emma to transfer to her company's New York office and move to the city. There was also a letter from some guy, Grant Martin, talking about a dinner party at her parents' house they were both attending and wanting to start corresponding. As cold as our relationship was, reading Emma's letters gave me hope for our future. In response to her mother's sarcastic comments, Emma professed her love for me and her hope that our marriage would survive. Her mother was equally adamant that there was little hope. In several letters, she mentioned my confession about Sharon Roberts, essentially telling Emma that I must have cheated on her with Sharon, and who knows how many other women, including this last one, referring to a note from Terry. Emma's only email to Grant Martin was in response to his email. She reminded him that she was married, hoped our marriage could be saved, and asked him to respect her wishes to be left alone. Tuesday, I spent my free time reading all of this. Tuesday night, I came home in a good mood, which only improved when I checked the mail. There was a letter from the other Jeff. He must have really wanted this to be over. I opened the envelope, and there was a notarized statement confirming that he was the same Jeff who owned the book and left a note inside from Terry. He even apologized for the trouble it had caused. Emma came home that evening where grilled steaks, a salad, and a bottle of Merlot were waiting for her. We ate before I handed her a letter from the other Jeff. When Emma read the letter, her eyes clouded over. She got up from her chair, sat on my lap, and kissed me. "That makes me very happy, Jeff. Almost as happy as I am to have you back in my arms. It's been too long. Would you like a glass of wine?" "Yes, Jeff. There should be a bottle of Chardonnay in the refrigerator. Would you mind pouring me a glass?" "Sure. Is there any water?" "No, I don't want to urinate all night. Just wine, thanks." I went down to the kitchen, poured her some wine, and got myself a beer. I set the wine on the nightstand. I could see the determination on Emma's face as I lay down next to her. "You don't know what it's like, Jeff. Wondering if your mother and father love you or if you're just another fashion accessory of society. Think about how differently you were raised. How your mother and father accepted me into their lives, even when I first met them. Then compare that to how my mother and father treat you." I interrupted her. "They never liked me." Emma gave me her look, the same one she gave me when I interrupted her. "You think it's just you? How many times have you seen any warmth toward me, their own daughter?" I had to admit it was rare, but assumed it was a reaction to her marrying me. I remained silent and nodded for her to continue. "Now imagine you're a young girl and your parents react this way to your presence. And when you turn 10, they send you to boarding school. I never thought they didn't like you. I only assumed they were treating you the way they've always treated me, with cold indifference. Tell me, Emma, what has this to do with our love and marriage? Why has it suddenly become important to you?" "Because 3 or 4 months ago, my mom called me and we went out to lunch. Mom said she wanted to build the relationship and was sorry that we had drifted apart. She threw an emotional lifeline into our relationship, and I'll admit I wanted that. Since then, she and I have spent more time together. She told me how proud she was that I graduated from Princeton with a bachelor's degree and was very complimentary of my career. I told my mom that we were thinking of starting a family. Admittedly, she advised me to wait. My mother said that was what caused her career to crash when my father insisted she get pregnant. She thinks she was too young to have a child, and that's one of the reasons we were never close. She blames her father for this and says you are doing the same thing to me, making me lose my individuality and fulfillment. I was struck by that last statement. Emma, that's too ironic. Last year, you were the one who talked about starting a family. When I hesitated, you decided we should get a dog to test our paternal instincts, as you put it. We got Samson, and I realized a few months ago that we were ready, that we would make great parents. And now your mom says I want you to get pregnant and walk barefoot in the kitchen? She didn't say that. It's the same thing. Emma, it sounds like Lois is driving a wedge between us. Yes, we talked about starting a family. I started to raise my voice, which is never a good thing. Emma responded. Mom only wants what's best for me. For the second time in 2 weeks, Emma uttered those exact words. I was reminded of the movie The Stepford Wives, in which all the wives were dutiful slaves to their husbands. Was I suddenly dealing with a Stepford daughter? I need this, Jeff. I need a relationship with at least one of my parents. You've been spoiled your whole life. 2 loving parents, 3 loving siblings. I need a mom in my life. I almost asked, what about us? But realized it was better not to ask, because in the mood Emma was in right now, she would take it as selfishness on my part. Besides, I had to be careful. The last thing I could afford was to give a tip on what I'd learned from reading her letters, but I had to ask. Is there someone else, Emma? Emma sat up and looked me straight in the face, her eyes burning into mine. Hell no, Jeff. No, I would never cheat on you. I had to defend myself. I'm worried about this whole weekend in New York. I'm worried because you're an attractive woman, and I know your parents have an active social life. I know that men are bound to like you and ask you out on dates. Was that too much to say? Emma's reply didn't sound suspicious. I've only been to one dinner party my parents threw last weekend at their house. One of my dad's co-workers was there, but you don't have to worry. He wasn't there as a setup. I remained silent and only responded by putting my arm around her shoulders and kissing her. My bottle of beer and Emma's wine glass were already empty. I turned off the nightlight and we exchanged I love yous. I rolled over onto my back and closed my eyes, hoping to get some sleep so I could at least forget my fears for a couple hours. So much for magical reconciliation, I thought to myself. The next night, I checked Emma's phone while she was making dinner. Damn, 2 calls from her mom today, and both lasted over 30 minutes. I was totally screwed. During dinner, I decided to take a chance. Emma, would you like to spend the weekend at the coast? I can get a room on Fire Island. Emma had the grace to make a guilty look. I'm sorry, Jeff. My mom called today and she has 2 tickets to see The Merchant of Venice with Al Pacino. She asked me to join her Saturday night. Can we go to the shore next weekend, please? Yes, of course. Next weekend. At least I slept in my bed again. We slept together, but we didn't make love. Thursday morning, I made my decision. I had the email addresses of my mother-in-law and Grant Martin, and with them, the war was about to rage on. For what I did next, I would be fired, unable to work in any IT department, and possibly go to jail, if I got caught. I sent fake emails to Lois Taylor and Grant Martin. Both emails turned out to be from a well-known online business and contained a link that, when opened, would infect both computers with 2 different viruses. One virus would allow me remote access to each computer, and the other was a keylogging virus that would record everything typed on the keyboard, including user IDs and passwords. Grant Martin and Lois Taylor, like many other people who have been scammed, will never know that their computers were infected. Looking back, 3, marriage. Our wedding was as any person raised in high society would expect. Despite Lois Taylor's feelings for me and her hostility toward the union, it was her time to put on a show. My parents, brother, and sisters were there with their spouses and children, but we kept the other guests to a minimum. Mr. and Mrs. Taylor showed no such restraint. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry was invited and probably attended. What a farce. One thing surprised me to the core. Jonathan Taylor was leading Emma down the aisle. Tears seemed to be in his eyes. He gave her hand to me and for the first time said something directly to me. Quietly, so quietly that no one could hear him over the organ playing Mendelssohn, he said, "Please take care of her." That was all until he turned to sit next to the Ice Maiden, my new mother-in-law. The reception was being held at their country club. I tried my best to smile at all the phonies who showed up to suck up to my in-laws. I think my mom, dad, brothers, and sisters rolled their eyes often enough and hard enough to get whiplash. At one point, my dad, brother, and two of my sister's husbands cornered me. My dad said it best. Jeff, Emma is a damn sweet and beautiful woman, but good luck with your new family. All four of us laughed, toasting to my happiness. The first few years of our marriage were wonderful. Ups and downs, but both Emma and I enjoyed success in our chosen careers and eventually managed to find a decent balance between work and fun. I suppose her parents had called a truce. Since we lived in Philadelphia, far enough away from Manhattan that constant interruptions were inconvenient, the truce held until very recently. Recently, we'd even started talking about kids, but being overeducated and overcompensated city dwellers, we did what every couple does in a similar situation. We got a dog to make sure we were ready for parenthood. Next came the big decision: rescue dog or pure breed. We spent probably as much time discussing our choice as we did buying our first apartment. In the end, we compromised, which meant we got a puppy that Emma fell in love with while spending a weekend traveling through Finger Lakes wine country. Samson was the friendliest of the litter, consisting of a Labrador mom and an unknown male dog. Of course, now I have to mimic all the other dog owners, companions, and go on for hours about why Samson is the smartest and sweetest dog ever, but let's keep it short and just say it's true. You'll have to take my word for it. After a year of living with Samson, we realized we were ready for kids. Emma was ready to drop the pill when the shit hit the fan. By Thursday night, Grant and Lois had opened my fake emails and both computers were infected with 2 viruses. I was now able to read all of their emails. What I learned blew my mind. Grant Martin was having an affair with Emma's mother. There were no heartfelt expressions of passion or love, just a few letters arranging secret meetings. I didn't have time Thursday night or Friday to dig through the various folders. I needed to focus on my project at work, but I did find a very important letter from Lois to Grant. Grant, I've enclosed with this letter the e-tickets for Saturday's play. Try to remember this isn't a date for Emma. You're just doing me a favor by taking Emma when I pretend to be sick on Saturday. Good luck, be as charming as ever, and she'll start to realize what a loser she married. Lois, I opened the attachment and found a PDF with 2 tickets for Saturday's performance of The Merchant of Venice. This email only added to the mystery. If my mother-in-law is having fun with Grant Martin, why is she setting him up on a date with Emma? I'm not usually known for my dodgy mind, so perhaps the answer was unfathomable to my straightforward brain. I decided to go to New York and find out for myself how far this could go. I set Samson up for an overnight stay at a local kennel and slept very soundly. The morning after Emma left, I took the Amtrak train to Manhattan and began to consider my options. I still loved Emma and thought there had to be some way to save our marriage. By the time I arrived at Penn Station, I had a plan of action ready. I bought a Yankees cap and baseball jacket, a cheap camera, and a bag of almonds. When I had 2 hours to spare, I walked into a grocery store on 43rd Street that served an excellent Reuben. I tried not to drink too much coffee or water. It could have been a long night. At 6:30, I sat on a park bench across the street from her parents' house. I hadn't been sitting there more than 15 minutes when I heard a voice beside me. What agency are you from? I turned around and saw a pretty woman standing there. What do you mean? Well, you're obviously keeping an eye on this building. I assume you're following someone. So what detective agency do you work for? I don't work for an agency. My wife's parents live there, and I think she's planning to go on a date with another man tonight. I'm just watching to see if she'll go for it or not. I'm sorry to hear that. But it explains why you're such a bad judge of character. Look, don't be so obvious, and what kind of camera is that? You'd have to be 20 feet away from them to get a single clear shot. She unzipped her coat to show me a nice Canon with a zoom lens. Here, step back to me. When you see your wife, point at her. I'll take a couple decent pictures for you. Why would you help me? For the $100 you'll give me when I email them to you. Believe me, they'll be worth your money. What makes you think I'm following someone? Because a quarter of the residents of this part of the park are private detectives keeping an eye on one of those 4 buildings across the street. Plus the Yankees cap. All the private detectives who come to town take a Yankees or Mets cap, thinking that's how they'll fit in. I took you for a small-town PI, chasing a deadbeat wife. But I didn't think you'd turn out to be an asshole husband. Her words hurt, but she continued her monologue. This part of town is a hotbed of crooks and a gold mine for detectives. Too much money and too little morality. Everyone here is entitled. I'm watching the building next to yours, waiting for some rich lawyer to walk out the door with his mistress. His wife is out of town and hired us to get some evidence of what he's up to. Perhaps he has a prenup. I'll still be here tonight to capture the two of them coming back from dinner. It's going to be a long night. She held out her hand. I'm Karen with an E. I watched Emma's building while my new friend talked. Men and women were going in and out, the doormen opening the front door and the doors of cabs or limos for the tenants. I didn't know what Grant looked like, so all I had to do was wait for Emma to come out of the door and see who she was with. As soon as Karen finished her introduction, Emma came out with a man I assumed was Grant. There they are. Karen picked up her camera and clicked the shutter a few times. She was so damn fast. She must have gotten at least 4 shots before they got in the cab and drove south. Gotcha! Now what? Now I focus on the building next door. From what I can tell, it's a little early for them. Let's go over here and sit for a minute. We went and sat on a park bench across from the neighboring building. First things first. If you send me your email address, I'll send pictures. It'll cost you $100. If you want, I'll take some pictures when they come back, and if I can get them, are you willing to part with another $100? Sure. Okay, here's the thing. If you give me the asshole's name, for another $300, I'll do a little digging and give you a little information. If we do that, we have to sign a contract to make it legal. I'll sign a contract with your agency? No, I'm a freelancer. Today I'm working as a contractor for the agency the lawyer's wife hired. And it's okay for me to hire you and not the agency? Yes. As long as it doesn't interfere with my contract work, I can mind my own business. It's not a conflict. I texted Karen my email address and Grant's full name. We chatted for a while. For some reason, I told Karen the whole background of why I was trying to save a marriage that seemed to be in deep shit. Karen turned out to be a great listener. My curiosity got the best of me. How did this petite lady end up as a private investigator? My preconceived notions, based on my love of film noir and 40s detective movies, had me envisioning Sam Spade or Philip Marlowe. Karen laughed when I asked my question. I spent 15 years with the NYPD, the last 6 years in the intelligence division, working counterterrorism. I was shot in the leg, lost everything below the knee, and ended up on disability. She bent over and pulled up her pant leg. Hell, it was a prosthetic. Decided to use what I learned to make some money, but also set my own work schedule. It's working out so far. I rarely work weekends like I did today. This was a special favor for a friend at the agency. As she spoke, Karen pulled out her camera again and started snapping pictures of the couple getting into the limo across the street. Are you going to follow them to the restaurant? No, it's probably not the kind of place where you can get something without getting caught. I'll grab a bite to eat on the next street over, and then sit here and wait for them to come back. 9 times out of 10, these couples have dinner and then go back to the love nest for the night. Not much romance in these cases. So what does the mistress get besides food? You'd be surprised. Some of these women earn as much as a good secretary. You just have to be willing to sell your soul. No thanks. What about the wives? Probably half our business. Some poor guy working 60 hours a week ends up guessing that some clown gets most or all of what should be his. Want to know the worst cases? It's when the DNA comes back and the kids turn out not to be his. It always ends in nuclear war. I once had a client who broke into his ex-wife's house, sat on her bed, and blew his brains out. That must have touched her conscience. No, it didn't. That poor guy didn't know his wife was out of town. The body was found by the damn housekeeper. By the time the ex came home after a spa week in Cannes, the house was clean, the walls repainted. Not many happy endings in this business. We sat for another minute after that, me thinking deeply about whether my story was going to end badly. I wasn't going to blow my brains out, but if we divorced, I would miss my wife. Look, don't get me wrong. If you're going to get a snack, can I get one? She looked at me for a moment before answering. No, Jeff. Go on home. I'm going to meet my husband at the diner. I already texted him and he'll be there in 10 minutes. Karen pointed her ring finger. What a detective I am. I didn't even notice the ring. We got up from the park bench and started to walk around. I noticed now that I was limping a little. I guess I was fixated on myself, wallowing in self-pity. I decided to talk about something other than myself. It must be hard being married when you see all that ugliness. Does it affect your marriage? It affects a lot of my coworkers. Some can't deal with all the crap they see. I'm very lucky. My husband Bill knows what I go through at work. He does both small and big things to make sure I know I'm loved. Take tonight, for example. I know his mom is watching our two boys, so he can meet me here and have a quick dinner together. We kept walking and talking. As we approached the diner, I made out the silhouette of a large man. As we got closer, I realized that Bill was a very trim and handsome man. He was my height, but probably weighed at least 30 pounds, and it looked like muscle. Karen wrapped her arms around him and he leaned in to kiss her but kept his eyes on me. Bill, this is my new client, Jeff. Jeff, this is my husband, Bill. We shook hands, both of us looking into each other's eyes and doing a firm but not too strong handshake. Bill spoke first. Let me guess, tight end? Damn, you're good. Did you play? No, did heavyweight wrestling at Penn State. Bill's smile was easy. He turned, and as he hugged Karen, his smile widened and his eyes sparkled. Hungry? He asked me. No, but thanks. I'm going to head to the train station and take the train home. Karen, please send the contract when you can. I'll sign it and return it to you right away with the money. Thank you for taking my case. Is that the right word? Karen laughed. I shook Bill's hand. It was a pleasure to meet you, Bill. You're a lucky man, but I have a feeling you're both lucky. Take care and thank you for inviting me to dinner. You both give me hope. Bill looked at Karen, but she only whispered, I'll explain. I did leave with a smile on my face. Sunday morning I overslept. The lack of sleep over the past few days was making itself felt. After brewing my coffee, I started my laptop and plugged in my hard drive to download all of Grant's emails from his archived folders. I also decided not to wait for Karen to call me, but to contact her at a decent hour using the cell phone number she'd given me. I needed to know what had happened Saturday night after I'd left town. With a cup of coffee and a toasted bagel, I started reading the letters. One thing I realized was that Grant Martin was a weasel. Lois Taylor wasn't the only married woman he entertained, and one letter in Grant's outbox answered a lot of my questions. Dennis. It's time to return the favor. For the past 4 months, I've been entertaining an old high society matron. This bitch is so blue-blooded, she won't even look at anyone below her. Hence her willingness, given my pedigree. What she doesn't know is that my asshole father disowned me 5 years ago. You're probably wondering why I'm even following some old broad. 2 reasons. Her daughter's a baby. But this old lady is crazy. She's trying to ruin her daughter's marriage to some lowlife so her daughter and I can get married, and then this old cunt and I can see each other without anyone suspecting a thing. Can you believe that shit? You can't make this shit up. Did I mention I work for her husband and he's a brainless prick? The old bitch is encouraging her daughter to leave her husband, and I'm waiting for her to pick up the pieces. I can guarantee a very long engagement. The daughter will probably be a babe, but too conservative for my taste, and you know I'm not the marrying kind. At some point, this old broad will probably want to talk to my old man. That's not going to happen, and that's where you come in. I'm sending you a cell phone. Keep it charged. When I call, answer it and pretend you're my father. I'll ask her to talk to you. Don't overplay it. Just pick up the phone as soon as possible. Remember, I'm counting on you like you counted on me last year. Don't screw it up. Sorry to be James Bond, but I don't want to take any chances until I have a chance to make a decent buck. Did I mention this old broad is worth millions? Yes, you did. Your brother TKE. Grant. Reading that, I almost felt sorry for Lois, for less than a second, and then I realized I was dealing with a snake's nest. This was totally out of my league, and I was hoping someone with Karen's experience would help me figure out the next step. While waiting for Karen Grant's call, I connected to my computer and spent several hours on the internet, including logging into my work server and running several different programs. I watched and recorded everything he did. I now had his user ID and password at the bank. By 2 p.m., I couldn't take it anymore and called Karen on her cell phone. Hi, Jeff. I've been waiting for your call. Sorry to bother you on a Sunday. Apologize to your husband and kids, but I need to know. What did you see last night when I left? You'll be happy to know that your wife showed up in the cab just after 10 o'clock. She got out of the cab and walked toward the door. Grant walked beside her and seemed to be trying to persuade her to let him in. She shook her head. He tried to kiss her, she turned away, and he only kissed her cheek before she walked through the door. The doorman must have gotten instructions because he didn't let Grant walk through the door. He turned away, but only after cursing the doorman. By then, the cab had left, and Grant must have already paid him back, rather cheeky of him. He must not be turned down very often. In other words, your fiancée didn't succumb to his charms. She got home at a decent time, and nothing untoward happened. Unless you count the fact that she went on a date with another man. I was glad Emma hadn't slept with that jerk, but I was still angry that our marriage was falling apart. Remember what you told me last night. She was set up by her mother. That doesn't excuse all of her behavior, but it does create a reason why she's acting this way. Okay, I agree. But this is something you need to hear. It sounds like Grant Martin is having fun with Emma's mom, and Lois Taylor is destroying my marriage to keep Martin around. No kidding, that's so cold. I've been in this business for years, and it never ceases to shock me how evil people can be. How did you find out about this? If I tell you, do we have some sort of client detective privilege? No, Jeff. If I get subpoenaed, I have to tell. So if you're doing something illegal, you have to decide if it's worth sharing. I thought about it and decided, what the hell, and told Karen how I'd gotten the emails. She, like many people in the past decade, was stunned. I also told her that I had Martin's user ID and password to access personal accounts and wire transfers. You can actually get a hold of this guy's computer and read his passwords? Hell, later this week you're going to have to teach me how to defend myself against the likes of you. In the meantime, I go back to my family, we're watching The Wizard of Oz, and the kids are giving me the, when are you going to stop talking on the phone look? Sorry, Karen. Call me tomorrow when you figure out Martin's biography, and I'll tell you the rest. With those words, we hung up, and I started digging through Grant Martin and Lois Taylor's email again. By Sunday evening, when Emma returned from her parents, I had tons of information, but I had no idea how to use it. Besides, all my clothes and other personal belongings were in the guest bedroom and bathroom. Not a few minutes later, she came rushing into the kitchen where I was sitting drinking a Yuengling. Jeffrey, where are your clothes? I ignored her question. How was your date last night? An expression appeared on Emma's face that I hadn't seen before. Guilt, horror, deception. What are you talking about? I didn't go on a date. Emma said it with such conviction that I might have believed her if I hadn't seen with my own eyes her getting into a cab. What do you call going to a play with an unrelated member of the opposite sex? Maybe look it up in the dictionary? There's that look again. Were you following me? Not that it matters, but I went into town yesterday. I was going to try to convince you and your mom that I should take you to the play, and I pulled up to their building just in time to see you getting into a cab with some guy. Who was it? Okay, I lied to her, but it sounded plausible, and I didn't want Emma to find out what I was really up to and what I really knew. Jeff, my mom got sick at the last minute, and one of my parents' friends was kind enough to drive me. Nothing happened. I played dumb. And who is this kind friend? Does he have a name? Grant Martin. He works for my father. I decided it was time to get her thinking. Look, Emma, this is bullshit. Your parents are trying to divide us. Think about it. I'll bet you $1,000 that your mother made a miraculous recovery on Sunday. This illness was staged. How did Grant Martin get free at the last minute? It's time for you to pull your head out of your ass and realize that our marriage is almost over. Emma jerked back on her heels as if she'd been shot. I didn't want this to escalate into screaming, so I took the opportunity to leave the kitchen and head for the guest room. It was a restless night, and I didn't get much sleep. I ended up getting up, leaving the house, and was at the office before 7. At 8, my cell phone buzzed with a message. Checking my phone, I saw that Emma had sent 2 words, Sharon Roberts. I guess Emma had already talked to her mother, and Lois was filling her head with nonsense. My marriage was rapidly circling the toilet, heading for the sewer. Late Monday night, Karen called me at work. Are you somewhere so we can talk privately? I closed my office door. Yes, I'm in my office. What's up? First, tell me again about Grant Martin's position at the bank. I figured you already had it all down, so I focused on the non-work issues. I lowered my gaze to my notes. As far as I can tell from his emails and access authorizations, he's a personal banker. He mostly handles trust accounts and other money management for wealthy clients. Yesterday, I watched him read emails from 3 different clients, 2 of whom asked him to transfer funds from various accounts to other accounts. Grant created instructions for the wire transfers that transferred these funds as soon as the bank opened this morning. The money was supposed to be transferred this morning. I will be able to confirm this later today when I get to my computer at home. I don't want to use my work computer for that. Did any of those transfers go to foreign banks? One was to an account in France. Some rich kid was studying in Paris and his father sent money for tuition, room and board. Karen seemed to think for a few seconds, and there was silence on the line. Then she began to recount what she had managed to find out so far. I spent the morning gathering dirt on our friend. First of all, the guy was having problems in college. I haven't been able to figure it out yet, but it was so bad that his family practically disowned him. He moved to New York to get away from everything that happened out west. Then I talked to a friend in the NYPD. It turned out that last year a college buddy of Martin's had stayed with him for a long weekend. This buddy, Dennis Riley, picked up a young girl at a bar and brought her to Martin's apartment. The girl had a little too much to drink and asked Riley to call her a cab. Riley refused and began to impose on the woman. When Riley fell asleep, the woman left the apartment and went to the local precinct and filed a report against Riley. The police investigate, but Riley claims it was consensual. Martin supports Riley. Martin signs a statement accusing the woman. Martin even claims that the woman hit on him after Riley went to bed. He says that's why she was so angry. When it's 2 against 1, the DA refuses to press charges against Riley. The cops wanted to charge the son of a bitch, but the DA said it would be a waste of time and money. So this guy gets away with it because Martin confirms his version of events? About right. I picked up Grant's letter to Dennis and read the first sentence to Karen. Karen paused for a second before replying. Looks like Riley owes Martin a big debt of gratitude for lying to him. How do you feel about doing some damage to those 2 assholes? One who rapes a woman and one who lies to get away with it? No doubt about it. What's on your mind? Last night you told me how you managed to get hold of Martin's computer. How good are you? I mean, do you think you can open foreign accounts using his identity? Given his position in the bank, do you think you can transfer his clients' funds? I have computer technical knowledge, but no knowledge of how to open an account. And how illegal do you propose to make it? I don't want to be involved in the theft of funds. If we do it right, no one will lose money. I think we can wrap this guy up tight, but it's something we have to discuss in person. Can you meet tomorrow night? I'd like to bring a friend with me. Karen, I'm sorry, but I have to ask. Why are you doing this without any monetary gain? I agreed to pay you a few thousand just to watch Emma on Saturday night and dig up dirt on Grant Martin. Now all of a sudden we're opening accounts, transferring money and all that. What's in it for you? Because I can't afford to pay you more, and I certainly can't afford to get caught or go to jail. This is personal, Jeff. Some asshole gave me something to drink and then took advantage of me. I was too embarrassed when I woke up to call the police or go to the hospital. When my roommate returned from her trip home that weekend, she found me crying in our room with no lights on. She convinced me to go to the hospital and the police. Unfortunately, by the time I was checked, there was no sign of it in my system. That was years ago. There are better tests now. I filed a complaint against the boy anyway, but it was he said, she said, and it didn't work out. So to answer your question, I'm doing this for that girl who was abused by Dennis Riley. She deserves to know that not every asshole gets away with it, and Grant Martin is going down for contributing to Riley. They're both scumbags. Karen's voice changed as she told her story. Obviously, it still caused her heartache. I had only known Karen for a few days, having spent less than 3 hours with her on Saturday night and on the phone, but I already knew that I would help her bring these scumbags to justice. As my grandmother used to say, sometimes putting yourself on the line, even if you're breaking the law, is the right thing to do. Before we hung up, Karen told me to send everything I dug up on Martin's computer. Bank accounts, loans, mortgages, etc. I told her she'd get it all tonight. We arranged a time and place to meet on Tuesday night. I made an excuse to Emma that I was working late, but it didn't matter as we danced around each other, hardly spoke and slept in separate bedrooms. Tuesday night I met up with Karen at a quiet pub. As promised, she had a friend with her. Karen introduced him only as Hank. If I had to guess, Hank was a former employee of one of the alphabet agencies, most likely from Langley. After I told Hank that I now had access to Grant Martin's computer and his personal and professional banking systems, he and Karen told me their plan. First, we buy an airline ticket to Dubai for Martin using his credit card. Second, open an account in Dubai for Martin. I'll give you instructions. Dubai is one of the most friendly havens for illicit funds since the Swiss got so much trouble from the U.S. Treasury. Third, arrange for wire transfers of several million to accounts in Dubai to be sent early in the day. This is where I interrupted Hank and turned to Karen. Wait, I said no stealing. Hank answered for Karen. We will make sure none of the funds leave the country. You will make one very minor error in the instructions for transferring the money. That mistake will delay the transfer and it will look like Martin tried to steal but screwed up. Okay? I thought for a moment, then decided. Okay. So what's next? According to what you found, Martin has a line of credit on the house with over $100,000 unused. He also has another $60,000 in a brokerage account. Both of those accounts are going to be compromised. 2 wire transfers to an account in Dubai, but they'll go through without error. Do you have a problem with that? Not if it's his money going overseas. Good, if he's being milked dry on this side of the Atlantic, it'll prevent him from getting decent representation, which will go a long way toward helping us get his douchey buddy Dennis Riley in order. Karen took this opportunity to add the next step. And here's the final step. You send a letter from Grant to Dennis. Here, read this. Karen held out the proffered letter to me. Dennis. Forget rich old broad, I've got bigger fish to fry. By tomorrow, I'll be rich enough to last a long time, at least until I find another old broad with more money than brains. That means leaving the country, but there's nothing here worth sticking around for. In a way, I have you to blame or thank, depending on how things work out. I got a call today from some investigator asking questions about your adventure last year. You should have learned your lesson at the University of Southern California like I did. Get Sleet's approval before you spout that shit, because next time I won't be around to lie for you. I'll contact you and let you know where I land. I'm sure the feds will be monitoring this email after tomorrow, so don't bother responding. I will delete this letter as soon as it is posted. I suggest you do the same. Your brother TKE. Grant. I finished reading and looked up, smiling. From what I've read in his letters to friends, you've picked up on his style, especially his use of misogynistic language. What's this about the University of Southern California? Karen replied. I found out today why Martin's family disowned him. There were 2 assholes who took advantage of the situation. The girl had a few drinks at the party. She had a reputation for being easily accessible. The girl killed herself a week after the incident. The Martins paid the girl's family $250,000 to hush up the case, but also disavowed Grant for his involvement. Rumor has it that this wasn't the first time they'd kept Junior out of trouble with their money. Karen's story strengthened my resolve to put Martin and Riley away. Okay, with Hank's instructions I can do all that, but we need to make sure Grant is in his apartment and not at his computer when all this happens. How do we do that? Grant will be busy. Leave it up to us. Can you do it tomorrow night? No problem. What's going to happen on Thursday? We'll make sure Grant is arrested early Thursday morning, before he has a chance to look like he's going to work. It should look like he might as well be getting on a plane that morning. It's a pleasure to work with professionals. Both Karen and Hank were consummate professionals. Hank's guidance on each step led to the desired results. Grant opened a new account in Dubai. His credit card was used to purchase first-class tickets for a late morning flight to Dubai. The line of credit was set up, as was the brokerage account. The wires were due to ship Thursday morning. I picked one of Grant's wealthiest clients and arranged to have the $5 million transfer ready by Thursday morning. But there was one simple mistake in that wire. The wire never sent. How did they make sure Martin would be in his apartment all night? It was done with the help of an expensive escort that I assume Hank used in his former life working for Langley, or whoever. This hottie happened to bump into Grant as he was leaving work and convinced him that she should buy him a drink to apologize for being such a klutz. Grant, being a self-centered egomaniac, decided that it was his charming personality and good looks that convinced the young beauty to have one more drink in his apartment. That's where the experience in subterfuge came in. The woman said that she had once already been treated rudely by a guy who started out seemingly well. She swore it wouldn't happen again and demanded to see her ID. Grant decided, what the hell, and pulled out his driver's license. Everyone knows driver's licenses are bullshit. Half the people in this town carry a fake one, but just in case, show me your passport. If Grant had been thinking with anything other than his little head, he would have questioned the lady's logic. But he decided, what the hell again, walked to his office, opened his desk, took out his passport and held it out to her. She looked at it defiantly, even flipped through the stamped pages, making cute remarks. Oh, Spain, how great. I just love Ibiza. She closed the book, put it on the hall table, grabbed Grant's tie and dragged him to bed. Grant Martin opened his door at 8 o'clock Thursday morning to find two of New York's finest detectives on the other side. Despite his protestations of innocence, he was, figuratively speaking, tied up in a little bough. It didn't help that the two detectives noticed Grant's passport lying on a table in the hallway. Going somewhere, Mr. Martin? The detective asked, handcuffing Grant. Of course, Grant knew he'd been set up. He just didn't know who or how. No one he'd ever entertained had that knowledge, at least not that he could recognize. All traces of the viruses on his computer and Lois's computer had been erased from their systems. To make sure of that, I had sent a command to wipe his hard drive even before the police showed up that fateful morning. It looked as if Grant had done it himself to erase all traces of his crimes. Eventually, the police contacted Grant's internet service provider to get copies of his emails, and that's where they found an email to Dennis, confessing to giving the cops a false statement and a fake email to Riley explaining his plans to leave the country with the illegally gained money. Karen's contacts at the police department turned out to be quite cooperative. They offered to drop the charges related to his previous false statement if Grant would testify against Dennis. Like the scumbag that he is, Grant went along with the deal, and Dennis Riley was extradited back to New York to face the charges. Of course, when Dennis found out about Grant's treachery, the two jackals turned on each other, and it was a delight to hear them cut each other to pieces. Grant Martin received no support from his family. Funny how his mother and father spent so much money to get him out of trouble when he was guilty, but didn't lift a finger when he was actually innocent of the crime. No matter how much he protested his innocence, he was found guilty of theft and other related charges. Grant Martin would spend the next 4 years in prison. With the help of Grant's testimony, Dennis Riley was sentenced to 10 years. By the time Grant testified, he and Riley hated each other so much that Grant was particularly outspoken. Grant's refusal to help, despite the woman's screams, did not reflect well on Grant, but the damage to Dennis Riley's defense was done. All of this happened over the course of the next year. While these events were unfolding, I had more personal issues to deal with. First, I needed to burn that bitch of a mother-in-law. On the afternoon of the day after Grant Martin's arrest, I made an appointment with my father-in-law. Mr. Taylor, I have some things to show you. Some of them will hurt Emma if I give them to her, if she believes me. Some might hurt you. I don't know you well enough to understand, but I'm sure you don't want your daughter to get hurt. So I am giving them to you to do with as you see fit. I have hired a private investigator to find out why my marriage has recently started to deteriorate. I have no idea how he obtained these materials, but I hope you will be as shocked by their contents as I am. I deliberately used only emails from Lois's account, not wanting anyone to know that I had access to Martin's computer, because he'd claim he'd been set up. Why back up his claims? Jonathan Taylor gingerly took the folder containing the letters from Lois to Grant from my hands. He leaned back in his chair and read for the next 15 minutes, interrupting his reading only to pour us both a cup of coffee from the carafe behind his desk. Maybe it's my inherent working-class snobbery, but I was impressed that he actually poured the coffee himself, rather than ringing some secret buzzer for the maid to come and do it. It wasn't the first time he surprised me that day. I think he did it to gather his thoughts. He looked particularly glum. After finishing the last page, he put the folder down and stared at me. I thought I asked you not to hurt my girl. Knowing that her mother used her in this way would hurt Emma. I'm sorry, sir. In that case, don't show it. I promise not to bring it up during our divorce. So you plan to divorce Emma? That would hurt her, too. Not my option, sir. Your wife seems hell-bent on ending my marriage to Emma, and right now she seems to be convincing Emma that it's the right thing to do. First of all, can we please stop with the sewer? My name is Jonathan and my friends call me Jack. I can assume you don't want to call me Dad, so could you start calling me Jack? I was stunned, but old habits die hard. Yes, sir. He looked at me and smiled for just a second and then asked, Tell me more about it because I can't understand how Lois suddenly became so controlling of Emma. What happened? I told Jack what I had learned over the past 2 weeks. Lois told Emma that she gave up her career for Emma. That she was too young when she married and had Emma, and that you forbade her from pursuing a career. She put a big fat load of guilt on Emma. I captured Jack's attention and decided to lay it all out in the open. I'm sorry, but this next part may seem blatant. Emma doesn't think she had a relationship with you or her mother. When she saw the way my family socialized, she thought something was missing. All the trappings of wealth, writing lessons, schools in Europe, whatever, didn't make up for it. When her mother started paying attention to her, Emma jumped at the chance to have that relationship. I didn't know if I was out of line. Jack was hard to read, but I guess that's what makes him a successful businessman. He picked up a folder from his desk and suddenly turned into a real person. Do you have any idea what it's like to turn 60 and discover your life is shit? No, of course not. I'm just ranting now. Emma's mother gave up her career? What a joke. Only if they have openings for manicures and spa treatments. For years, I had to listen to her tell everyone about her dream as a young girl to play women's professional tennis. You actually have to play tennis well to make a living at it, and Lois, after 45 years of lessons, still can't make a backhand. All my adult life, I've spent 90% of my time working at this bank, doing everything I can to make it the most successful and reliable bank of its kind in the Northeast. That's the way I was raised. We were a different generation than you. Few of us are best friends with our wife. When we have free time, we head to the golf course to make connections that will help the business. I spend more time with my foursome of golfers than I do with my wife or daughter. And you know what? My wife wanted it. She showed no interest when I suggested she take golf lessons. She talked me out of it when I suggested taking up tennis. In fact, she said it would prevent her from improving. But until today, I had no real evidence of cheating. I was in blissful ignorance. Jonathan's candor shocked me, and all I could say was, I'm sorry I was the one who brought this to your attention. No, Jeff. I'm grateful to you for giving it to me. It's one thing to get a little love on the side. It's another to be so conniving that you're willing to sacrifice Emma's happiness to keep your lover around. And with one of my employees. Talk about tooting our own horns. Every day that little shit walked past me knowing he was having fun with my wife. Well, he won't be entertaining my wife for a while because he was arrested this morning for stealing from one of our clients and providing false information in a criminal case. If everything we heard from the police this morning is true, Grant Martin will be gone for a while. And Lois? Well, unfortunately, Lois has her own trust fund worth millions, which pretty much works in my favor in the divorce. She'll park her ass at the spa or on the tennis court crying crocodile tears. Some Lothario will pick her up and I'll be easily replaced. She will lose a bit of social status. Some other wives will avoid her because they will be defending their territory. In this world, we live on a dog-eat-dog basis. She'll also lose her relationship with her daughter, but from what I've read here, Jack picked up the folder, she probably won't care much about that. And Emma? I wonder if it's too late to start a relationship with my daughter. I love her, I really do, but I let her mother control our relationship. Another thing I owe Lois for. By God, I have to find a way to make Lois pay for all the pain she's caused. Maybe not right away, but somehow. In the meantime, Jeff, I want to ask for your help. You say you love Emma. If you can look past that, do you think you can repair your marriage? I don't know, sir. I mean Jack. Logically speaking, what happened is not her fault. She was manipulated by her mother. And it helps that she didn't get into bed with Martin. At least I don't think so. But emotionally, that's the hardest part. I'm not like you. I just showed you proof of your wife's infidelity and duplicity, and you didn't shed a tear. You were a little angry, but you kept your cool. I, on the other hand, when Emma walked out the door that second weekend, I cried for the first time in my adult life. I don't know how you do it. Jonathan Taylor looked at me and made a decision. Because I started locking my emotions in a bottle over 40 years ago. Let me tell you a story that not many people have heard. When I was fresh out of college, I enrolled in Navy flight school. It was tough, but I passed OCS. I was so proud of myself the day those stripes appeared on my uniform in front of my parents. I was going through flight training when my life became a living hell. I messed up and crashed. Broke both legs and my back, and my radar intercept officer, Ted Andrews, was killed. I spent 6 weeks in the hospital. When I was able to walk without crutches, I went to Ted's parents to apologize. I will never forget their faces as they looked at the man responsible for their son's death. I returned to the base a broken man. I cried for days. I was useless to the Navy. They gave me an honorable discharge and sent me home. My parents were kind. They placed no additional blame on me. They sent me to Harvard so I could get my MBA and put it all behind me. But not a week goes by that I don't think about what I should have done that day to prevent the accident. I wasn't drunk or hungover or anything like that. It was just a mistake that cost a man his life, and it was my mistake. Ted's parents never wanted to hear from me again, but I've dedicated part of my life to his memory. In addition to my volunteer work, every year I make a $10,000 donation to the USO and one of Gary Sinise's funds for wounded soldiers. So amidst all that, a whore as a wife seems like a small thing. I listened in silence, and when he finished, I looked at my father-in-law. I saw a man with a huge weight on his shoulders that he had been carrying for far too long. I knew there was something I could do to lessen that load, and I realized what I was going to do. One last look back, meeting Emma. As I navigated the circumstances, it's important to remember how much Emma's recent behavior has been out of character. This can only be attributed to her need to finally connect with her mother, which never showed the normal mother-child love between mother and child. My thoughts went back to the first conversation I had with Emma that summer 8 years ago. In between my NGO duties, I was walking past Columbus Square when I noticed a familiar face sitting on a bench. The young woman, whom I recognized from the office, looked like she could use a friend. I took a chance and approached her and introduced myself. "Excuse me, I've seen you in the office before. I'm Jeff Parker. I work in the Information Technology Department." I held out my hand. The girl looked into my eyes. There was a sign of recognition in them, but it was also obvious that she was crying. I felt embarrassed for disrupting a possibly private conversation. Instead, a hint of a smile appeared on her lips. "Yes, I saw you there. I'm Emma Taylor." She took my hand. "May I sit down or do you want to be alone?" "No, please have a seat." I took another chance. "It's obvious you've been crying. Would you like to share?" Emma paused for a second. "Did you hear the news today about the 2 girls in Sudan?" One of the charities the NGO supported ran schools for girls in Sudan and other African and Middle Eastern countries. There, the girls were taught to read and write, as well as domestic skills and health education. Teaching women these skills did not always endear them to the local population. "No, I've been in the bank with the servers all day. It's the first time I've been out of the server room all day," she said. Yesterday in Juba, 2 sisters were dragged out of class by the girls' grandparents. They were upset that the girls' parents allowed them to read and write, claimed it was a plot by the West to turn the girls against Allah. This morning we received a report that the sisters had been mutilated and had had their clitoris removed. All this was done with the approval of the local imam. I didn't say a word in reply. I had heard of this barbaric practice among some Muslim tribes, but I had never heard of it being applied to women until today. Emma began to cry again, but then went on. "What I cannot understand is how people who claim to follow a God can think it right to destroy what that same God created." She paused. "Do you think we're doing some good out there? Or are we just creating a bigger mess?" "I won't pretend to know the answers to your questions, Emma. But my grandmother taught me something when I was a kid. I was visiting my grandparents on their farm when a big thunderstorm hit. We saw a big funnel cloud, and the 3 of us tried to corral all their chickens into the barn. There were probably 20 of the 25 chickens in the barn when Grandpa closed the door and told me to go to the basement. I started to protest, not understanding why we were abandoning the homeless. Grandma set me straight. "If you try to save everyone," she said, "you'll probably end up saving no one." Emma looked at me with her beautiful eyes. She was really listening to me with interest. "I think you could apply your grandmother's philosophy to what your organization does. Try to save as many of these young women as possible from a life without hope. You'll never save them all, But you shouldn't lose sight of the positives while you're saving as many as you save. Your grandmother seems like a wise woman. But what do you mean by you? Don't you work for an NGO? Not exactly. I am under contract with KPMG. When I am done converting systems, I will go on another assignment with another company. That's the life of a consultant. In 2 months, I could be in California or Virginia. It must not be easy to make friendships. I can't imagine such a nomadic life. I've only lived in 2 places in my entire life, here in Manhattan and where I go to school in Princeton. Even my prep school was 5 miles from the university. You use the present tense. Are you still in school? Yes, I have 1 more year left at Princeton. I'm here as a summer intern. Does that mean you're working here without pay? Yes, but that's not a problem. One thing my father believes in is community service. He gives me a decent allowance on top of paying for school. Money isn't a big problem. When I graduate next spring, I'll have a chance to try living on my own, but for now I'll have to focus on my studies and helping out here as an intern. That must be great. As soon as I said that, I realized how sarcastic it might have sounded to her, but Emma didn't put it out there. Yeah, and I won't deny it. I have friends at school who have to watch every penny or borrow money to pay tuition and rent. Having a disposable income takes away the need to be a student. As Emma spoke, I realized how different this woman was from many of the wealthy people I'd met in Wharton and beyond. Over the course of our 30-minute conversation, Emma expressed sympathy for 2 strangers in Sudan and for her classmates at school. I later learned that on the same day we talked in the park, Emma had been hit by a cab on her way to work. She had a large bruise on her thigh, but that wasn't talked about until a few days later. This was a woman worth knowing, but before I could say a word, she surprised me again. Jeff, since you said it's hard to make friends while wandering the planet, would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Of course I said yes, and so began our friendship with Emma. A friendship that grew into a relationship that is now jeopardized by her mother's evil meddling. Leaving my father-in-law's office, I took the train and returned home. An hour later, Emma walked through the door to find dinner on the stove, a bottle of breathable Merlot, and a dozen red roses on the table. It took her a few moments to notice the 3 sets on the table. I see we're expecting guests. Who? Your father. My father? What about my mother? Has something happened to my mother? Please tell me. No, nothing happened to your mother. Your father and I just want to talk to you about some things. Go wash up, he'll be here any minute. Thank goodness Jack rang the bell right away. I don't think I would have been able to restrain Emma for long. Perhaps my plans for a quiet dinner were naive. The wine was poured and the pasta was on the plates. But as soon as we sat down at the table, Emma wanted to know why her father was here without her mother. Jack fell on his sword and began to tell Emma what her mother had been doing for the past few months. Emma became hysterical, crying, "No, no, no, no," until Jack led her out from the table and sat down with her on the couch, and Emma cried on his chest. I cleaned up the kitchen and let them have some alone time. I took Samson for a walk. When I returned half an hour later, Emma met me at the door, her eyes still red. Jeff, I'm so sorry. Please tell me you want to stay together. Please, Jeff. I want to, Emma. I never stopped loving you and I never wanted to be your husband. My biggest fear was that you changed your mind and were going to leave me. I was so stupid, but I told you how important it was for me to communicate with my mother. Now that's over with. What about your father? My father wants to mend the relationship, but he's afraid I'll be wary of his motives, given what happened with my mother. We'll take our time, but first he wants me to work on the damage I've done to our marriage. Father will be going on vacation soon. He'd like to take us both to an island in the Bahamas for as long as we can be free from work. He wants to get to know us both better. That's great, babe. We'll work out the details later, but for now, that's just great. Come on, let's go try to eat. I heated up dinner in the oven. The pasta isn't al dente anymore, but I'm sure it will be delicious. The 3 of us sat down at the table again and took the first step on the long road to healing. Old habits die hard, and my father-in-law was not affected. Despite his best intentions to take a full 2 weeks vacation and spend it with us on the island, it took almost a year. In the meantime, he spent almost every weekend with us, bonding with a daughter he regretted never really knowing. Like me, when Emma and I first met, He was pleasantly surprised that she turned out to be such a lovely, selfless girl. Having Jack become involved in our lives helped Emma recover from her mother's betrayal. Emma and I spent those months putting the pieces of our marriage back together. It was made easier by the fact that Emma had never cheated on me or lost her moral compass. The night of the play with Grant was chaste. Not that Grant wasn't trying his best to make something happen, it was just that he ran into the wrong woman, something he wasn't used to with all the whores he usually tried to bed. We ended up spending a week with Emma and Jack on Cat Island in the Bahamas. Emma spent another 4 days after I left to be alone with her father, and I needed to get back to work because of new responsibilities. My project was completed on time and on budget. My reward was the coveted title of IT director, as well as a nice bonus and a pay raise. Speaking of bumps, Emma had to be convinced that she could still wear a bikini on the island, even with such a nice bust. Paul Jonathan Parker, named after both grandfathers, was born just over a year after that heated pasta dinner. Claire Emma Parker, Claire is my mother's name, was born 2 years after PJ. Jack retired when he turned 63 and does his best to spoil his grandchildren. He even bought a small apartment nearby that he uses as a second home. Things weren't so good with Lois. Jack had divorced her shortly after we'd met that Thursday afternoon. It had probably cost him a fortune in legal fees, but thanks to the evidence of her attempt to destroy his daughter's marriage with the involvement of her lover, and the fact that Lois had millions in trust funds, Jack had been able to walk away from Lois without paying her alimony and retain enough assets to keep his retirement comfortable. When news of Lois's duplicity became known to the society matrons, she became a pariah. Everyone knew she was a snake, but they didn't know how low she could sink. Lois moved to Palm Beach first, but her reputation followed her. She'd been denied membership in the local tennis clubs, and in her 9 months in Florida, she'd never made a single friend, not one pretend friend. Palm Springs was next in line, nothing like a few thousand miles to get rid of a bad odor. Although Lois had been allowed to join the beautiful people her millions might have swayed, she couldn't compete with the young wives for men's attention. Lois made the mistake of many aging women with low self-esteem. She went to a plastic surgeon. Unfortunately, she ended up looking like one of those crazy clowns with the weird smile and crazy eyes. I only know about the horror of her facelift because 2 years after Claire was born, Lois showed up on our doorstep. When I opened the front door, it took me a few moments to recognize the person standing on the other side of the screen door. I didn't even bother opening the door, I just spoke through the screen door. "Lois, what are you doing here?" The lack of friendliness in my voice couldn't have been more obvious. "I want to see my daughter and grandchildren." "Lois, you're not welcome here. No one in this house wants to see you or even acknowledge your pathetic existence. Now go away." It took every ounce of self-control not to scream. "You have no right to keep me from seeing Emma and the kids. Open the door." "Lois, you don't understand. I'm not preventing them from seeing you. Emma doesn't want to see you, and will do everything in her power to keep you from infecting our children with your anger." I started to close the door just as Lois was opening the door. I paused for a moment. "Oh my God, what have you done to your face?" It just came out of my mouth. Lois was stunned by my comment long enough for me to close the door in time. She doesn't give up that easily. The next day was Monday. Lois figured I'd be at work and called home. Emma later told me that their conversation was short and to the point. Emma confirmed that Lois was persona non grata in our house and around the kids. Lois offered Emma a carrot. If she could visit her grandchildren, she would receive $10,000 for each of the first 10 visits to their college fund. Emma refused the bribe. Lois showed up at the daycare center. That was enough to get us a restraining order. Lois tried to call Jack and ask for his help, portraying, "We were married for 30 years, blah, blah, blah." Jack laughed and hung up. Last we heard, Lois was back in Palm Springs and had gotten back together with some gigolo who had taken quite a bit of money from her. How sad. Sometimes bad things happen to bad people. It reminded me of my last action against Grant Martin. Using an assumed name, I sent Martin a letter. It was a short poem, only 8 sentences. It read, "He's innocent," your lawyer said. But the jury thought otherwise. "For the crime that sent you to the bottom of the barrel. There are forces that come to the rescue. I'm innocent," you said again. But karma and justice went hand in hand. And now you realize, asshole, that you just screwed the wrong person. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.